Chapter 141. Floating Island. Ash listened to every word exchanged between Christos and the young dragons, his posture still and quiet as he remained hidden above. Their conversation stretched on for a while, with Christos carefully instructing the younglings on what needed to be done and how to execute it. Ash heard everything, about a baby dragon escaping, about the increased surveillance and the order to find the hatchling. But despite all that information flooding his ears, his focus latched onto just one sentence with an intensity that blocked everything else out. He is going to the egg chamber, a chamber where the dragon eggs are stored? His closed eyes slowly opened, and within that darkness, a glint of something sharp and calculating passed through. Those lifeless eyes gleamed faintly, the light of a buried instinct surfacing, like a predator catching the scent of something rare. The eggs, they must be precious. Then the treasury, the true vault, must be equally important. And considering the dragons are few in number, with most of them in hibernation, they wouldn't have the manpower to guard everything with equal force. His mind churned furiously as he continued to think, piecing the logic together. If I was a dragon, I would place everything valuable in one secure location and then assign all my available strength to protect that one place rather than spreading my forces thin across multiple points. Could it be? As the thought fully formed in his mind, his head rose ever so slightly, his gaze now fixed on Christos, who was slowly walking away from the crowd of dragons. His retreating figure was regal, quiet, yet every step held weight. Christos was heading toward the large portal. Ash had seen that portal earlier when he had first arrived at the underground chamber, but he had chosen not to enter it back then. After learning it led to the resting grounds of the hibernating dragons, he had immediately retreated. He had no interest in clashing with sleeping dragons, not when his objective was something entirely different. He had come here for something else, and until he found it, he had wanted to avoid any kind of conflict. By the way, this is my first time seeing him in human form. Ash thought quietly as his eyes lingered on Christos. Earlier, he had witnessed Christos's true dragon form, but back then, Silver Dragon's body had not released even a trace of power. Now, standing at a distance away from him with long flowing robes, silver hair cascading like moonlight, and eyes shimmering with a silver hue, his presence was different. His entire being radiated an aura that spoke of raw, unfiltered power, and Ash could feel it deep within himself. The source of that power was unmistakable. Bloodline. When Ash had first woken after absorbing the dragon's blood, his body had not emitted any aura, which he believed was because the bloodline was still dormant. But even then, the simplest gesture Ash made seemed to carry overwhelming strength more than he had ever imagined possible. Luckily, his new armor and clothes had a special function. They increased weight on him while supplying mana, and Ash liked it. This was not because Ash enjoyed pain or was some kind of masochist, but because he still lacked precise control over his newfound strength. He used the added weight to prevent himself from accidentally breaking the floor or causing any disturbances that might alert the dragons nearby. This was also why his mana was running low. He was juggling 3 extremely mana-consuming tasks all at once. I have to hurry. Ash glanced toward the massive portal ahead, then looked down at the 3 stones resting in his hand. These were his anchor points, little safeguards he had crafted during whatever free moments he could find. Christos stepped through the portal. At this moment, one of Ash's mana cores was completely drained, while the other core was continuously using mana to maintain absolute concealment and the color-changing feature of his clothes and armor. It might just barely work. What he was going to do next was filled with risk, but there was no other way around it. If he wanted to enter, then he had to do this. There were far too many eyes watching the portal area, and he could not just casually walk over to it without attracting attention. He placed the 2 stones in his left hand, making sure to keep them steady, while the effect of Omni-Thought was still active within his mind, keeping his thoughts focused and clear. With his right hand, he picked up the 3rd stone, and without wasting any more time, he threw it with full strength directly toward the portal. The stone shot forward like a rocket, tearing through the air with incredible speed. Swoosh! A soft sound rang through the wind as the stone disappeared from sight. A few of the more sensitive young dragons nearby twitched slightly and looked up toward the sky with puzzled expressions. One of them tilted his head and quietly muttered, "Did something just pass above us?" But no one else had noticed anything, and since there was nothing visible in the sky, they all assumed it was just a trick of their imagination. No one reported it or said anything more, and the moment quietly passed. Meanwhile, the instant the stone crossed through the portal, Ash activated Transcendent Step. He vanished completely from where he stood. The world around him changed instantly, shifting like a dream breaking apart. He now found himself high in the air, with the very same stone he had thrown now firmly back in his hand. His body was in free fall, pulled down by gravity as he descended rapidly. As he looked down to gauge where he would land, a sudden chill crept up his spine, stirred by the sight that unfolded beneath him. Damn the crazy dragons! Ash cursed inwardly as he felt the air resistance crashing against his body. Yes, he was incredibly high, so high that the world beneath him looked distant and surreal. He could feel how thin the air had become at this altitude, and even the simple act of breathing required effort. The lack of oxygen pricked at his lungs, and to his shock, he could actually make out the faint curve of the planet, the soft glow of the boundary where the sky met the edges of space. I knew the dragons were crazy, but this is on another level. If anyone who didn't know how to fly got teleported here, they would have died before they even realized it. Ash thought bitterly, his eyes locking onto Christos, who was gliding ahead with practiced grace. He also noticed that the large portal had vanished behind them. It was a one-way passage. If Ash wanted to return, he would either have to rely on Transcendent Step or find another portal altogether. I wish I could ride him, just once. Ash thought silently as his eyes followed Christos's distant figure, which was slowly shrinking against the backdrop of floating clouds. Well, it's fun though. Skydiving. I always wanted to do it one day, he whispered to himself with a small smile. His voice, barely louder than a breath, was immediately swallowed by the furious wind howling past his ears. He waited, letting himself fall through the open sky, watching Christos drift farther away. When the dragon was nearly out of sight, Ash activated Transcendent Step once again. His figure vanished and reappeared high above, even farther in the sky than Christos, still falling with gravity pulling him downward. As Ash looked ahead, a quiet laugh echoed in his thoughts. Haha, so here it was. Spread out before him was a colossal floating island suspended high in the sky. It wasn't just a simple patch of land. The island carried several towering mountains, and nestled right at the center stood a massive black castle, dark and elegant. A long waterfall flowed from one of the cliffs, its silver stream falling endlessly into the clouds below. The place was vast. It was hidden, and it was beautiful in a way that felt unreal. Crazy. To think they had something like this hidden here all this time, and no one outside ever knew. Surrounding the floating island were four cube-like constructs, each roughly the size of a normal car, hovering silently and without any visible source of power. Ash didn't know exactly what they were, but the design and placement made it easy enough to guess their purpose. There was nothing here before, but as Christos approached, the island revealed itself. It must be protected by some kind of concealment artifact or illusion formation. The moment his feet touched the bark and his senses adjusted to the new surroundings, a shift in the air made him pause. The mana here, it's even denser and purer than what I felt back on the Dragon Continent. Ash thought with a slight sense of shock, his eyes narrowing as the sensation settled into his bones. For a brief second, a small flicker of light returned to his otherwise lifeless eyes. I feel like I've stepped into the land of treasures. The thought echoed in his mind, and for the first time in a long while, the silence within him felt just a little less empty. Chapter 142, Elemental Sight. Are there no guards? Ash thought, his eyes sweeping across the vast mountains surrounding him. Each towering peak held massive caves, and there were many such mountains, each unique in shape but similar in what they held. Some of the caves had tails dangling lazily out of them, and others even had a dragon's head poking slightly from the opening. their breaths slow and heavy, clearly in deep sleep or hibernation. It was obvious this area was meant for resting dragons, huge, ancient beings taking shelter within their chosen dens. But what struck Ash as odd was the complete absence of any guards. He was currently standing on top of one of the mountain peaks, his form cloaked in concealment. After arriving on the island, Christos had vanished without a word. The moment his feet touched the floating land, he had teleported away instantly, leaving Ash behind. If he could teleport, then why in the world did he waste time flying here from the portal? Was it just to show off his presence? Or was there some restriction? Seriously, that was so unnecessary. Ash mentally complained, though he didn't let it distract him too much. It wasn't as if he had no clue where to go. From the moment Ash laid eyes on it, he had been moving steadily toward the Black Castle. The castle was huge and shaped to resemble a dragon's face, with dark stone walls and spiked ridges that gave it a fierce and slightly terrifying look, especially for younger beings who might set eyes on it for the first time. Ash's mana reserves, which had dropped quite low earlier, were already halfway recovered thanks to the immense density and purity of the mana in this place. With just a few more precise teleports, he finally arrived before the castle entrance, a towering gateway made of obsidian-like material, intimidating and ancient. Let's not waste more time. Every second counts, and I'm already cutting it too close. With that thought, Ash quietly slipped inside the castle, his steps silent and his presence completely hidden. What greeted him was nothing, absolute stillness. There were no guards, no movement, no signs of life at all. The castle was strangely quiet. He moved through wide, echoing hallways and dimly lit chambers, searching every corner, but the only things he found were a few rooms. They looked like they had once belonged to someone important, with personal touches still left untouched. I really thought I'd find something here, a dragon core, or maybe even a heart. But there's nothing, just empty rooms and silence. Ash was disappointed, and the light in his eyes that had briefly glowed with a hint of interest after arriving here had once again dimmed, fading into the same dullness as a dead night. That leaves only one possibility. There is another hidden space here somewhere. But how do I find it? Ash stood still outside the castle, balanced on top of a thick branch of a dense tree, his body unmoving as his thoughts ran wild, digging deep for any clue. As his mind wandered and circled the same question again and again, and then it happened. The third eye symbol slowly appeared on his forehead, hidden behind the mask, and began to glow faintly with a soft silver light. In that very moment, a strange feeling washed over him, unlike anything he had felt before. It was as if he had been blind this entire time and had only now truly opened his eyes for the very first time. What is this? Ash was taken aback, his senses overwhelmed as he noticed colorful particles floating in the air around him. His thoughts raced in disbelief. Is this mana? He stared at the tiny glowing specks as they drifted past him, noticing that they weren't all the same. Some were a pure white, others shimmered in shades of blue, and the rest radiated in a deep violet hue. Only those three types of particles were actively coming toward him, getting absorbed into his body. The violet particles were the most abundant, constantly flowing into him like a steady stream. The white ones came next, swirling softly, while the blue ones were the fewest, appearing only occasionally. Space mana? Its quantity is the highest, while lightning, which I'm most attuned to, is barely even present. And these white particles, I can feel they are attributeless, pure mana without any elemental nature. He stared at the violet particles now flooding into him and understood the reason. It was not anything complex. Environment. It made sense now. The surroundings were filled with space-type energy because they were so close to the boundary between the planet and outer space. This place was not naturally suited for lightning mana, and that explained the imbalance. And as he thought deeper, another doubt in his heart seemed to find a possible answer. Was this the reason I wasn't able to use life energy properly before? He couldn't be completely sure, but somehow he felt like he was getting closer to the truth. This discovery also made him aware of something new, something connected to the strange symbol that had just lit up on his forehead. So these symbols have some uses after all. But is this all there is? Is this their only purpose? He didn't have the answers yet, but he was sure that this wasn't the end of their potential. Setting the thought aside for now, he turned his focus back to the massive amount of space mana swirling in the air. I think I can guess where it's coming from. Some of it is from the sky above since we are so close to outer space, but the rest of it must be leaking out from the hidden realm I mentioned before. But I need to find it quickly. After the runic symbol activated, my mana is being devoured at a crazy pace. Ash did not hesitate. Without wasting a single moment, he began to move. His speed was smooth and fast, his form flickering from one corridor to the next. He did not stop to ponder why the symbol activated or what it meant. His personal rule in such matters was simple and direct. If something is working, do not interfere with it. Within moments of running, he arrived at one of the rooms inside the castle. It was a place he had already checked before, and at the time he had found absolutely nothing inside. But now things looked entirely different. The entire door and the surrounding room were covered in a deep violet aura, so dark that it was nearly turning black in places. A few spots were already fully black, like ink staining the edges of reality. What a strange method of hiding. But how do I enter it? As if responding to his unspoken question, his eyes shifted toward the door knob. It had a small bump, something he had assumed earlier was just a design meant to help grip the handle with a thumb. But now that his vision had changed, he could clearly see that this bump was completely black, far darker than the rest. That meant only one thing. The space mana was so dense and concentrated on that single spot, it had turned pitch black to his newly awakened sight. But just as he moved forward, his mana ran out completely, and even the absolute concealment he had activated around him was forcefully undone without warning. Shit! Ash cursed in his mind, his heart momentarily tensing from the sudden vulnerability. But he didn't move even an inch and continued standing exactly where he was. I was so immersed in the sight that I completely forgot to keep track of my mana. The reason he didn't move even an inch was simple. The mana he had infused into his clothes, which allowed him to feel the weight of his body and helped him restrain and control his strength, had completely vanished along with the rest of his mana. If, by any chance, he accidentally used too much force and made even the slightest sound, and if there happened to be a sound detection formation or artifact installed anywhere nearby, then his presence would be exposed in an instant. Of course, it was very likely he was overthinking things again, but this habit of overanalyzing had saved his life more times than he could count, so he trusted it without hesitation. He stood completely still, waiting for his mana to replenish, and after nearly 10 minutes of silent waiting, his mana had recovered just enough for him to reapply the weight-enhancing function to his clothing. That symbol was only active for 5 minutes, and yet my mana was drained completely. What a crazy glutton. But does that mean the runic symbols can be used, and somehow I am using power of runes indirectly without understanding how? He didn't know for sure. It was just a guess at this point, but it was one worth remembering. Pushing the thought aside for now, he reappeared in front of the same mysterious door. It really is strange. The mana around the door feels completely normal, just like the rest of this place, but what I saw through Elemental Sight was something entirely different. Elemental Sight was the name he had given to the strange perception he experienced when the third eye symbol activated, the feeling of seeing the world's true flow of mana. If that's the case, then this door must have some hidden function or mechanism that conceals its true form and mana structure. Finding no clear answers, he narrowed his focus onto the knob, more specifically on the strange bump it had. He tried pouring mana into the bump to test it, but rather than wrapping around the surface or forming a coating like it usually would, his mana disappeared the instant it touched the surface, as if it was being pulled into a different dimension altogether. This isn't normal absorption. It's like it's transferring my mana somewhere else. Do I need to place something here? But what could it be? He stood there, deep in thought, trying to come up with something small enough to fit into the bump but unique enough to act as a key. Something that only dragons would possess. And the first thing that came to his mind was blood, specifically dragon blood. But there was a problem. Although Ash carried the dragon bloodline within him, it was still dormant, and he had no way of knowing whether it would work or not. On top of that, he still wasn't entirely sure about the nature of his other two bloodlines either. Still, it's worth a try. With that thought, he pricked his finger and dropped a bit of blood into the bump. The blood was absorbed instantly, but there was no reaction. Well, maybe I was wrong after all. But just as he was about to step back, another thought surfaced in his mind. His expression shifted slightly beneath the mask as he remembered the blood crystal he had stored earlier. He quickly brought it out and, holding it carefully, moved it toward the bump. As the crystal neared the knob, a deep violet glow began to pulse softly from within the bump itself. Click. A soft, almost gentle clicking sound echoed faintly through the still air. Just bringing the crystal close had been enough. The door responded on its own, recognizing something hidden within the crystal and silently allowing passage. A small smile curled behind Ash's mask, subtle and fleeting. He carefully stored the blood crystal back into his storage and took a slow, steady breath, letting the quiet excitement settle within him. It's open. Not that it was exactly locked to begin with. Still, I can feel it. This door leads somewhere else, not just into an ordinary room. With a slightly accelerated heartbeat, he placed his hand on the knob and slowly pushed the door open. Chapter 143. Caught red-handed. Ash waited patiently until his mana reserves had fully recovered, ensuring that they were more than sufficient to reactivate absolute concealment. Only then did he take a calm breath, steadying the subtle acceleration of his heartbeat, which wasn't from fear but from a quiet tension that came with stepping into the unknown. With focused intent, he wrapped his fingers around the knob and gently pushed the door open. The instant it creaked ajar, a whirlpool of deep violet energy surged outward from the gap and coiled around his body like a living current. It didn't resist him with force, but it held him tightly, dragging him in without giving him any chance to pull back or resist its pull. This sensation, I'm being pulled through a spatial tunnel. The thought echoed faintly in his mind as the world around him lost all stability. The pressure of the real world faded, replaced by a strange weightlessness, and everything around him twisted unnaturally, as if space itself was folding over and around him. It was neither painful nor smooth. It was just unreal, like stepping out of a story and into the page margins. Even before he could open his eyes again, an odd sense of danger began creeping over him. His instincts flared, sending an urgent warning through every nerve in his body. Shit! Something is definitely wrong here. Without hesitation, he tried to activate Transcendent Step, hoping to blink out of whatever danger awaited him. But the skill didn't trigger. Why isn't it working? His thoughts barely had time to form before his eyes snapped open, only to be met with the sound of voices echoing around him. Didn't I say someone was definitely following me? Another voice, colder but filled with agreement, added, Yeah, you were right. But who in their right mind would dare to trespass into our sacred place? And then came a third voice, laced with disdain and disbelief. People these days are getting far too bold. To think someone would just enter here like this. Ash turned his head toward the sources of the voices. What he saw immediately confirmed what he had feared. He was surrounded. 10 figures, all of them middle-aged men and women, stood at equal distances around him. Their expressions unreadable, but their auras unmistakably dangerous. Looks like I really got caught. That realization alone didn't shake him. What truly made his gut twist was the unnatural silence inside his body. His mana was gone. It wasn't being blocked or sealed. It simply wasn't there, like it had never existed. Looking down, he noticed intricate patterns glowing faintly on the ground beneath his feet, stretching out in every direction. The formation was complex, yet orderly, and pulsed with an eerie energy that felt like a void swallowing everything magical. A mana nullification formation. I've only read about this formation in the novel, and even then, they were treated like rare, almost mythical things. So this is what it actually feels like. Lifting his head again, Ash kept his composure, his eyes calm and expression hidden behind the mask. He focused on Christos, the only familiar person among the group, and spoke in a voice that held no fear. "How did you know?" His words were simple, yet they carried weight. Christos, already understanding the question beneath the surface, gave a casual nod. He simply responded with the same calmness. "I already had a lingering suspicion the moment I entered the portal. My senses couldn't pick up anything concrete, but something felt off, as if there was a presence that did not belong. It wasn't logic, it was instinct. A sixth sense that kept telling me something was not right." "So you went ahead and laid a trap for me using this mana nullification formation?" Ash asked. His voice deepened by the mask's enchantment, making him sound older and far more composed than a child his age should. Before Christos could respond, another man stepped forward from the circle. He looked slightly older, with golden hair that gleamed under the dim light and golden eyes that seemed to glow faintly. The moment Ash saw him, it was obvious. This man was a golden dragon. With a half-smile tugging at the corners of his lips, the man spoke in a calm, almost amused tone. "We don't really owe you any answers, do we? After all, you're an intruder. Isn't it only fair that we punish whoever tries to sneak into our place?" From his voice, it was clear that he was very angry about this whole situation. With a wave of his hand, Ash was pulled toward him by a strong force that lifted him off the ground. But before the golden dragon could catch him by the neck, Ash manifested all his willpower in his arms and legs. Turning with full force while still in midair, he delivered a powerful kick to the golden dragon's chest. Bam! The other 9 dragons around them were shocked by the move. Their eyes widened in surprise. What made them even more stunned was that the golden dragon was pushed back a step. Although it was just one step, for dragons, their strength was their pride, and to be pushed back, even if the golden dragon had let his guard down, was a shameful thing. But, contrary to what everyone expected, the golden dragon did not get angry. Instead, he muttered quietly, "Interesting, you have strength even without mana. I thought you were just a coward who only knew how to hide and teleport." Ash wavered slightly when he heard the word teleport. But he did not have much time to think because he was pulled again toward the golden dragon by a strange and much stronger force. Is he also using his willpower? But this is stronger than before. I can't fight it like last time. Within a second, the golden dragon's hand was gripping Ash's neck tightly. "Do not kill him, Ariel. We have many questions to ask," said one of the middle-aged women with black hair and black eyes. She was a dark dragon. "Of course. I am not stupid. How could I kill him when I have so many questions?" Ariel, the golden dragon, replied calmly. Ash watched everything with calm eyes, even though he was being suffocated. His mind raced, thinking about how to get out of this situation. "My mana has not disappeared. I can still feel it inside me. The mana nullification formation is powerful, but my primordial core is not just for show. The mana inside it is the same as before. It's only when the mana leaves my core that it disappears, and since there is no mana in my surroundings, it cannot recover. I can cooperate for now and answer their questions, but as soon as they take me away from this place, I will run." "But would you look at that?" said one of the red dragons. "Even though we are releasing all our aura, he is not flinching at all." It was true. They were not hiding their power in the least, but Ash was not bothered by any of it. If it was a normal person, he would be shaking by now. "Even young dragons would be trembling like they had seen death," said a water dragon. "But whoever he is not normal. Otherwise, he would not have been able to hide from my perception," Christos said. "How do you know it's a he? Could be a she," another dragon challenged. "Aren't you also calling him he?" Christos replied sharply. "Ugh, you know what I mean. Don't twist my words," the other said, annoyed. "Be silent for a while. I am going to question him," said the middle-aged man with white hair and white eyes. Although he was not the strongest, he was the second in command of the dragon race. The white dragon, Alarion, looked straight into Ash's eyes, while Ash was held by Ariel. "Tell me, who are you?" he asked. "Why do you want to know?" Ash replied calmly. The grip around his neck tightened as Ariel said in a chilling voice, "Answer the question, bastard. If I don't, what will you do? Kill me?" Go ahead, do that, Ash said defiantly. Everyone went silent at his answer, but soon one of the dragons stepped closer and whispered into Ash's ear. He was a space dragon with violet hair and violet eyes. Do you think we will give you a peaceful death? We will torture you. Before he could finish, Ash cut him off sharply. Shut up. I haven't talked to anyone in a long time. My personality has gotten a little rougher, so don't piss me off. Otherwise, blood will flow. This bastard is really driving me crazy, Ariel growled with anger evident in his voice, and without warning, he pressed harder into Ash's neck. The force was so strong that a small crack echoed in the silent air around them. But even then, the eyes behind Ash's mask remained as calm and emotionless as before. There was no sign of fear, no sign of panic, only a chilling stillness that made the surrounding dragons uncomfortable without knowing why. The white dragon, Alarion, stepped forward, his expression stern as he raised his hand and placed it over Ariel's arm, stopping him from going further. Don't kill him. Control yourself, he said calmly. But there was weight behind his words that made Ariel pause. Ariel took in a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down, and finally loosened his grip, though his golden eyes never left Ash's face. Alarion turned to face Ash again, his eyes meeting the calm gaze behind the mask. His voice was quieter now, but there was still a firm edge to it. Just answer us. You were the one who infiltrated this place. No matter what your intentions were, you owe us an explanation. Ash stayed silent for a few moments, as if thinking about whether it was even worth answering. Then, with a calm tone that matched the stillness in his eyes, he finally spoke. I am Dragon Slayer. Chapter 144. Dragon Slayer. There was once a time when the dragons were not so hostile. Well, maybe calling them friendly would be a bit too much, but at the very least they weren't openly hostile to the other races like they are now. Back then, dragons still had enough patience to talk. They were willing to sit down, communicate, maybe even negotiate when it benefited them. Their pride was great, but their actions were measured. But all of that crumbled 800 years ago. Most of the humans who lived during that time have long since passed away, their memories lost to dust and legend. Yet dragons, with their long lifespans, remember everything. And they are not the only ones. A handful of high-ranking powerhouses from other races still recall what happened back then, because the world changed forever. It all began with a single human child. There was nothing remarkable about him at first glance. He was neither strong nor talented. In fact, most people considered him the weakest of his generation. But what set him apart was his class. Dragon Slayer. No one paid much attention to him at the beginning. He was weak, and the name of the class felt more like a cliché than anything threatening. But fate has a strange way of turning weakness into legend. By sheer chance, that boy killed a low-tier draconic beast deep within a rarely explored dungeon, and absorbed its power. That one kill changed everything. He discovered he could absorb the strength and traits of any draconic species he defeated, even if they only carried the faintest trace of dragon blood in their veins. From that day on, he made it his purpose to seek them out. He began hunting down lesser monsters, those with diluted dragon bloodlines, clearing dungeons with a relentless hunger. Years passed. His power grew to the point where he no longer needed to fight low-level monsters. He began tracking down lesser dragons, quietly assassinating them in the shadows, vanishing without a trace each time. And with every heartbeat, his strength surged higher without limit. Greed took hold of him. It wasn't enough anymore, and eventually he killed a young dragon. That was when everything turned into chaos. The dragons exploded with rage. They no longer saw him as a threat to be ignored or underestimated. He became a menace that had to be extinguished at any cost. They began hunting him with relentless fury, unleashing their full strength to erase his existence. For 45 years, the chase continued. In that time, he killed more dragons than anyone could count. His legend became a curse. He was no longer just a dragon slayer. He was a calamity. People feared him. Some admired him. But the dragons hated him with everything they had. Eventually, the dragons gave an ultimatum to the other races. Help us kill him or face war. A war that would burn the world, even if it meant everyone perishing together. Humans were the most affected by the threat. The Dragon Slayer was one of their own. But faced with extinction, they had no choice. One man's life versus the survival of an entire race. The decision was cruel, but it was clear. And so, the hunt intensified. Even the races that once ignored him turned against him. They feared his potential. They feared what he could become. After another 5 years of fighting, running, and surviving, the Dragon Slayer finally died. But the dragons were not satisfied. Their fury didn't stop with his death. To protect their future, they isolated their entire continent, shifting it to the center of the ocean and forbidding any outsider from stepping foot onto their land ever again. That cursed name, which had been buried for centuries, suddenly echoed once more. I am a Dragon Slayer. Ash's voice rang out, laced with a teasing tone, a smirk hidden beneath the mask. The moment those words reached the ears of the dragon elders, killing intent exploded from all 10 of them like a storm of blades. It was suffocating. Ash's body trembled slightly under the weight of their power, but not from fear. He did not regret saying it. He had attacked first not out of strategy or desperation, but because he hated being looked down upon. The memory of someone gripping his neck, the same scene he had seen millions of times in that silent space, triggered something deep him. He remembered too well what it felt like to be weak and dismissed. He remembered the shame, the helplessness, and he had enough. Even now, when he was far from his full strength, even while standing at the center of the storm, surrounded by beings that could crush him like an insect, he stood his ground. He would no longer hide. He would no longer rely on timid caution. If the world was going to crush him, then he would at least roar back with everything he had. The white dragon, Alarion, turned to Ariel and spoke in a voice that held quiet coldness, the kind that settled into one's bones. Make sure his screams echo throughout the entire chamber. Hearing that, Ariel grinned, his expression twisted with something old and bitter. Of course, he replied, his voice low and filled with unpleasant memories. He reminded me of something I would rather forget. Still holding Ash by his neck, Ariel lifted his other hand and reached for Ash's face, intending to rip off the mask that concealed his identity. But as his fingers tried to pull it away, the mask did not move. Ariel's brows furrowed slightly, a flicker of confusion passing over his face. What is this? He pulled harder, putting more strength into it. Ash's neck was forced forward under the pressure, but the mask remained fixed, refusing to come off. Seems like that mask is not just a decoration, the space dragon said, his violet eyes narrowing in interest. It might be a high-grade item, maybe even mythical rank, the blue dragon murmured with uncertainty. But those kinds of items are extremely rare, almost like unicorns. How could a mutt like him possess one? Ariel was clearly irritated now, but he kept his emotions in check. He did not let his anger take control. He turned his gaze toward the red and gray dragons and spoke with calm authority. You two hold his head steady. If I apply more force, his neck might snap off entirely. They exchanged a quick glance but said nothing. Though their expressions clearly showed they disliked being ordered around, they moved without protest and placed their hands firmly on Ash's head and shoulders, locking his body in place. Ash did not resist. His eyes, half covered behind the mask, were calm and unwavering. There was no fear, no begging, no sign of surrender. As Ariel gripped the mask again and pulled with all his strength, a disturbing sound echoed across the room. It was a wet, slow tearing sound, the kind that made even the dragons pause. Ash's skin began to peel along with the mask, sticking to it as if fused by something deeper than simple magic. Blood started to run down his face. At first it was a thin line, then more dripping down his chin and onto his clothes. But he did not scream. Even though the pain was sharp and violent, Ash stayed still. His jaw clenched tight, breath shallow, but no sound escaped his lips. The agony was immense, the kind that could break a person's spirit, But Ash focused all his will into his mind and body. He endured it not because he could not feel it, but because he refused to show weakness. The mask had done its job. It did more than just hide his face. You want to hear my scream? Even for him, the pain of having his skin torn off was unbearable. His nerves screamed, his body trembled slightly, but he didn't activate Omni-Thought. He didn't want detachment. He wanted to feel this. He needed the pain. He needed to stay grounded in the raw emotion that surged through him, unfiltered and real. The dragons stared at him, a mix of confusion and curiosity in their eyes. But before any of them could speak, Ash's voice rose again, harsher this time. Like hell I will scream. Go yourself. The silence that followed was heavy, almost thick enough to choke on. You really are fearless, Ariel muttered, his voice carrying a strange mix of irritation and admiration. The mask was now in his hands, but instead of a normal human face, what lay beneath was horrifying. Torn skin, exposed muscle and bone, threads of tendon still twitching faintly. Lunatic. Blood ran down Ash's neck, staining his clothes, yet the skin showed no sign of healing, because Ash wasn't letting it heal. You might not know this, Christos said, his voice calm but firm, but Alarion can detect lies, so if you lie, things will only get worse. Just answer what you're asked, and maybe we will let you die peacefully. But Ash wasn't paying attention. But Ash didn't respond to him. His body was here, bloody and broken, but his mind had already started to wander. It drifted through the past, pulling him back to all the moments that brought him here. I transmigrated but almost died because of an half-awakening. I joined the academy, but was mocked and abandoned as worthless. I created a new identity, but was branded a criminal. I tried to protect someone again, and almost ended up losing Nancy once more. I came to a new place, but ended up becoming someone's food. And now, here I am, getting tortured again. His face was in ruins. Only muscle and bone remained, blood dripping steadily, soaking into his black clothes. The pain was still there, but his eyes didn't blink. His vision stayed fixed above him. He stared at the ceiling, more precisely, towards the sky that wasn't even visible from where he was. Was I wrong to believe that fate was not affecting me? Or maybe fate was always at work from the very beginning, and I was just too late to notice. Chapter 145, Torture. What should we do now? From the way things are going, it does not seem like he will speak no matter how much we torture him. One of the elder dragons beside Christos said in their native Draconic tongue. Their voices lowered as they switched fully to Draconic, trying to keep their words hidden from Ash. Humph, just give me some time alone with him, the red dragon said, his tone filled with pride and cold certainty. Once I am done, he will be begging to speak. I will make sure he explains everything. Why he came here, how he managed to evade our eyes until now, and what exactly he is hiding. Christos, who had been quietly listening, raised his voice slightly to bring them back to the main issue. Let us not forget what truly matters. We still need to confirm whether he is the one acknowledged by the throne. I already told you all. The throne reacted. He paused as a heavy silence filled the room, then continued. There is no missing egg from the sacred chamber, which means the only possible link to the throne's reaction is standing right in front of us. Christos, I think you are starting to lose your mind. The dark dragon spoke with a sharp tone. Have you forgotten that only those born from our bloodline can resonate with the throne, with the blood crystal, or with the ancient bone structure? Do you sense even a drop of our aura from this boy? The weight of his words caused a hush to fall over the gathered elders. But it did not last long. Why are we wasting time? Another dragon elder finally said, his voice annoyed. Did all of you forget that this boy dared to mock us by calling himself a dragon slayer? Instead of throwing around wild theories, I say we throw him in the deepest cell and torture him slowly until he breaks. They went on, each voice adding to the rising tension as more and more opinions clashed. Some were cold, others were angry. They argued and debated for what felt like a long time. All the while, Ash remained completely still, his body hanging by the neck in Ariel's iron grip. He said nothing, made no sound. But he listened. Every word reached his ears clearly, because of the passive effect of the rune of knowledge. Even their draconic language was no barrier to him. His mind spun like a storm, bracing for what might come next. Eventually, after what felt like half an hour, the elders began to settle down and reached a decision. Their first move would be to recover the blood crystal and any trace of the true draconic essence from Ash. They believed he must have hidden it away using some kind of storage artifact. They were confident that if he had absorbed even a sliver of the essence, they would have sensed it immediately. But what they did not know was that even if his dormant bloodline had stirred, the passive power of the rune of concealment would keep them blind to it. One of the dragons took his space ring. Inside, there were many things: stacks of gold, packets of preserved food, the precious necklace that Solareth had gifted him, and many more. But among all the items, the blood crystal stood out the most, its shine unmistakable as they reached out and took it. They also picked up the fragment and the cursed eye he had obtained during the trial, though their expressions shifted subtly when they saw the eye. It was as if they recognized something, but chose to remain silent. Ash watched it happen with a distant look in his eyes. A small thought passed through his mind. Maybe I should have created an inventory skill instead of relying so much on concealment. It was just a quiet sigh within his heart, one that faded as quickly as it came. Once they secured the crystal, their next goal was clear. They had to find out who Ash really was, what his intentions were, and where he had hidden the true draconic essence. Ariel, the Red Dragon, and Christos all stepped forward, volunteering for the task of making him talk. They would use any method they found necessary. Ash could feel that they were moving him somewhere else. It seemed like they were finally taking him out of the mana nullification formation. Or at least, that was what he understood based on their final statements. After his earlier words, Ash had not spoken again. He remained completely silent. There were two reasons. The first was that he did not want them to know he could understand their language. He had mocked them because he just wanted them to remind them of Thyr's dark past, and to fasten the process of making him Thyr's prisoner. In that way he might leave this formation. And the second was far more personal. His face had still not healed. The mask was no longer covering it, and Ariel still held it in his hand. If he spoke now, it would be too much unnatural. And Ash had not allowed the rune of life to activate. He had blocked it from restoring his torn skin and exposed muscle. Even though his internal injuries had already recovered, his outer face remained bloodied and raw by his own choice. Soon he was taken to another room. Of course, before moving him, they tied a black cloth around his eyes. It was not an ordinary cloth. It was a special tool designed to block sight completely, even from those who could see with magic or divine senses. Once they reached the new room, the mana nullification formation was gone. But now, Ash's hands were tightly cuffed with the same mana-blocking handcuffs. Nothing changed. Once again, no mana was able to leave his core. His entire mana flow was sealed off like a river frozen in place. Ash was aware that with enough strength, he could break free from these restraints. He was not that weak anymore. But, because of that cursed dragon Ariel, now there are more than 5 of these cuffs locked on different parts of my body. The thought passed through his mind like a slow burn. Now alone inside a pitch-dark room, a space without a single flicker of light, Ash sat quietly. The silence was thick and heavy. His breathing echoed softly against the cold stone walls. And then a new thought formed in his mind. If I use that method, I might still be able to break free from these cuffs. But it'll create too much noise. The sound will definitely alert someone nearby. So, he stayed still in the dark, letting silence wrap around him like a second skin, while his mind kept moving, planning and preparing for whatever came next. He didn't have to wait long before he was shifted to another place. As soon as he entered, someone removed the blindfold wrapped around his eyes. It was Christos. "How are you feeling?" Christos asked, his voice calm, as though this was a casual meeting. Ash replied with a low voice, the words laced with quiet rage. "I feel like killing everyone." Hearing that, Taylor, the Red Dragon, narrowed his eyes slightly and commented, "I never realized you were just a child. That mask really did its job well. It even changed your voice." Ariel, standing nearby, scoffed and folded his arms. "Killing everyone? Ha! What a joke. Keep dreaming." Taylor didn't waste any more time. "Let's not drag this out. We should begin." And with that, they started the torture session. Christos, however, didn't join them. He stood quietly to the side. It wasn't because he pitied Ash, but because of something more complicated. If Ash truly was the one acknowledged by the throne, then Christos feared committing a grave mistake. Harming someone chosen by the throne would go against the oath he took. So he chose to watch, hoping for any kind of sign. He had come here for this very reason, to see, to be sure. And if he saw even the slightest hint that Ash was the chosen one, he was prepared to step in and stop the torture immediately. If only the throne reacted every time the chosen one touched it, he thought with regret. But that wasn't how it worked. The truth was simple. The throne only glowed once for the person it acknowledged. It won't show any other reaction now. And without that, Christos couldn't confirm anything. Otherwise, he would have just dragged Ash to the throne himself. While there was another method to confirm that, but no one among the elders would agree for that method, and he alone can't make the others comply. Time passed slowly. More than 2 days went by. Ash's body was suspended in the air, arms stretched, hung like a cross, like a modern-day Jesus Christ. His entire body was bloodied and bruised. His face was barely recognizable beneath the dried blood and torn skin. The scene was too horrific to put into words. You might wonder how dragons, proud ancient beings, could bring themselves to torture a child. The truth is, they didn't want to. At first, they were hesitant. But Ash made it worse for himself. Every time they questioned him, he would either mock them, curse at them, or simply remain quiet with a smug look that made their blood boil. And so, in their wounded pride and anger, they lashed out harder. For Ash, this was no less than a hellish trial. He had to bear unimaginable pain. Every strike, every wound tore into his body, and on top of that, he had to focus every bit of his willpower to stop the rune of life from healing him. He knew that if they ever discovered his ability to regenerate at such a high rate, things would take an even darker turn. They would change their methods into something far worse. His eyes burned with exhaustion. His mental energy was almost gone. He felt like he had been awake for years, his body torn and nerves on fire. His eyelids grew heavier with every passing second. I can't sleep, he thought. If I fall asleep, the rune will heal my wounds. And then, he didn't even want to think about what would happen if that was discovered. I need to stay awake just a little longer. And just then, a voice echoed in the chamber. Let's stop for now. We can return after a break, Christos said, stepping forward. The 2 dragons beside him didn't look pleased. Their expressions twisted with frustration, their pride clearly wounded. Not once had Ash screamed. Not once had he begged for mercy. They stared at Ash one last time, their eyes filled with something between disbelief and irritation. Then, without saying a word, they dropped their bloody tools and walked out of the room. The truth was, this wasn't a job meant for dragons of their status. Torturing someone, especially a child, was beneath them. But because lesser dragons were prohibited to enter in the floating palace, they had no choice but to do it themselves. Before leaving, Christos gave Ash a final glance. His eyes lingered for a moment longer. Then, without saying a word, he turned and shut the door behind him. Thud. The sound of the heavy door closing echoed through the room. Are they gone? Ash, hanging there in silence, slowly lifted his head with great effort. His neck screamed in protest, but he forced himself to look around. There was no one in sight. I need to wait a little longer. After that, The thought trailed off unfinished. Chapter 146. Evolved Eclipse. What a stubborn child. Christos's thoughts stayed in the air like a quiet whisper as he walked ahead with the others. His eyes paused for a moment on the room they had left behind. That place still felt heavy. The silence wasn't normal. It felt cold and full of something they didn't understand. He had lived for hundreds of years, seen empires rise and fall, watched heroes become legends and dragons fade into myths. But in all that long life, he had never seen someone like that boy. A human child. Yet he didn't cry. He didn't scream. He didn't even speak his name. And those eyes, they weren't just empty. They were full of something deeper. A quiet fire, burning low but steady. They held pain, anger, and a kind of sadness that made even an ancient dragon like Christos feel uneasy. What kind of life did he live to have eyes like that? Christos didn't know if what they had done was truly right. He told himself it was needed, that they had to do it to learn the truth. But something in his chest didn't agree. Felt wrong, like a weight pressing down on his heart. A feeling that wouldn't go away, no matter how hard he tried to ignore it. Behind him, Red Dragon Taylor walked in silence, but his thoughts were boiling with anger. That damn human brat didn't even make a sound. He had used force, pain, and fear. He had done everything that would make anyone beg or cry. But the boy didn't even flinch. He just stared with that cold, empty look, like Taylor's power didn't matter at all. But what made Taylor truly furious was what the boy said. I am a dragon slayer. That name wasn't just a title. For Taylor, it was a nightmare come back to life. His mate, the one he had loved more than anything, had been killed by a dragon slayer. Her last scream, her broken wings, the way her warmth faded, all of it lived in his memory like a curse. Now another human dared to speak that name. A child no less, and he had the nerve to look Taylor in the eye and not break. Felt worse than pain, worse than shame. It was like fate had spat in his face. Next time I will not hold back. I do not care how young he is. I will forget he is a child. I will forget mercy, forget limits. I will become the monster the world fears. I will make him beg, and I will not stop until every trace of that pride is crushed beneath my claws. Even if it means losing myself. A little farther back, Ariel walked with calm steps, but his mind was full of questions. There's something strange about that boy. He didn't know what it was, but he could feel it. Something lingering around Ash like invisible threads. Threads that tugged at the world itself, pulling reality closer to him. Something hard to see, but easy to feel. It was like fate itself was wrapped around him. He is deeply connected to fate. I can feel it weaving around him, binding things that should not be bound. Dragons didn't have the power to see fate like the Solareth and the Whisperer, but when someone lived as long as they did, their instincts became sharp. They could feel when something wasn't normal. And there was more. Ariel remembered how he felt when he stood close to Ash. Even when I was near him, I could feel myself getting more and more agitated. It was not natural. My emotions were twisted, amplified. It was as if something around him was manipulating my emotions, stirring the worst in me. Ariel frowned, the memory still vivid in his chest. His hands had trembled with fury that wasn't his own. It was like something around Ash was pulling at him, changing his emotions, making him feel things he normally wouldn't. That scared him more than he wanted to admit. Is it fate, or something darker? Ariel did not have the answer yet, but he knew he would bring it up when the elders gathered again. This could no longer be ignored. His gaze turned toward Christos for a moment, and a thought came to him. He must have come here to check if the boy had even a little sign of being the chosen one. If Christos had found anything, maybe he would have stopped the others. Maybe he still will. But that won't be enough. Because even if the boy truly is chosen, even if he has dragon blood in his body, the other dragons won't care. They won't let him live. It was a harsh truth, but Ariel understood it clearly. Dragons had too much pride. It was part of who they were. It was in their blood, their bones, their fire. They had never bowed to any race, not even to the gods. The idea of kneeling to a human, even one chosen by fate, was something most dragons would never accept. Would I be willing to kneel before a human king, even if fate chose him? Even if he is the true heir to the throne? The thought sat heavy in his chest. He could already see what was coming. If Ash really was chosen by the throne, it would not bring peace. It would tear them apart. Some would support him. Others would rise against him. The sky would bleed, and many would fall. And from that chaos, a new war would begin. Not a war between humans and dragons, but a war between dragons themselves. About 5 minutes later, the Chamber of Torment finally fell silent. The dragons had all left, their footsteps fading like distant echoes in the stone walls. Ash slowly opened his eyes, a dull ache still pulsing in every corner of his body. It's time to begin. 5 minutes should have passed by now. He stopped resisting the pain. His body, no longer locked in tension, began to respond. Slowly but surely, his wounds started healing on their own, as if something inside had been waiting for this very moment. His heartbeat, once faint and scattered, now pounded steadily like a war drum. A soft, white, mysterious symbol on his heart suddenly began to glow, casting a blinding light inward, hidden beneath skin and blood. Warmth spread through his body like a gentle tide. The pain didn't vanish completely, but it lessened. The heaviness in his limbs lightened, and the fog in his mind thinned just enough for him to breathe more freely. I am still feeling sleepy, but not as bad as before. He was still tied down, but the threat of losing consciousness had passed for now. What he didn't realize was that the mark glowing on his chest had responded to his suffering. It had acted on its own, giving him a bit of relief, just enough to keep him awake, just enough to let him fight back. Ash took a slow, quiet breath, his eyes still half-lidded with exhaustion. Let's break everything. He closed his eyes once more and focused, gathering what little will he had. His attention turned inward, toward the space between his eyebrows, his glabella, where the pathway to his soul was present. Just a day ago, he had received a system message, one that now echoed clearly in his mind. Your weapon Eclipse has evolved after resonating with the runes in your soul. Warning: unsheathing the weapon for the first time may cause disturbance in the surroundings. He took a deep breath and slowly reached with his will, commanding the sword to come. From the center of his forehead, a small ripple began to pulse across his skin like a drop falling into still water. And from that ripple something emerged. Small at first, like a piece of jewelry, a sword no larger than an earring began to slide out. But this was not the same Eclipse he had known. The sheath, once pure white, was now pitch black, but near the top, soft rainbow colors shimmered like oil on water. The hilt was wrapped in mysterious, colorful symbols that pulsed faintly, as if alive, each one shifting and glowing with soft energy. A fine, rainbow-hued string dangled from the pommel, glinting like a celestial thread tied to fate itself. Once the miniature blade was fully drawn, it floated in front of Ash and slowly began to expand, taking the full form of a jian, a sword both elegant and ancient. It floated silently in front of him, hovering like a loyal guardian awaiting command. Ash could feel it resonate with his soul. He didn't need to move or lift a finger. He could simply will it to act. This weapon was more than steel. It was a companion, part of him. Even without checking its attributes, the aura it radiated told him everything he needed to know. It pulsed with a mythical, terrifying power, so much so that it reminded him of the same overwhelming presence that leaked from his primordial core. My mental strength is nearly gone, but at least I have enough to break these damn cuffs. He hesitated for a moment, his thoughts flickering back to the system's warning. I still don't know what kind of disturbance it might cause. I just hope it's not too much. Ash took a shallow breath and whispered, voice hoarse but steady, "Unsheath, and cut my bindings, Eclipse." The moment the words left his lips, the blade reacted. The air around it trembled as a deep, low hum began to rise. It wasn't just a sound. It was a vibration in the very air, like a living war cry. Hum. The sound grew, resonating deeper and deeper, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Ash's eyes stayed locked on the sword. The bindings around his arms and legs began to tremble. The silence was gone. An eclipse had awakened. Chapter 147. So, what did you find out? The white dragon asked, his voice steady but curious. As soon as those words left his mouth, the rest of the dragons shifted their focus, all eyes turning toward the three figures walking out from the underground chamber hidden beneath the castle. While they could have easily observed everything that had happened down there with their senses or through magical means, none of them had done so. It wasn't because they couldn't, but more because they preferred hearing things directly. Watching someone being tortured never sat quite right with all of them, and hearing a report always felt clearer and more composed. Though they had seen the first few hours of the process, they had chosen not to watch the rest. Well, he was really tough. We didn't find anything useful. But we planned to increase the intensity of the... Taylor started to explain, his tone already laced with irritation. However, before he could finish his sentence, something unexpected happened. A sharp humming sound suddenly echoed through the entire place, sharp and heavy, almost like a war siren ringing through the walls. Immediately after, an explosion erupted from the underground chamber, shaking the entire place. The walls trembled, and the ground beneath their feet vibrated as cracks spread rapidly. In the next second, the entire floor they were standing on was torn apart into several large, uneven pieces. Arcs of a glowing sword aura slashed through the air, streaking across the chamber with alarming speed. Although the dragons easily dodged the deadly arcs, the chamber itself was now under threat of collapse, trembling beneath the weight of the attack. "Stop that!" the blue dragon shouted, his voice filled with urgency and desperation. At that moment, the space dragon stepped forward and raised his hand. As he did so, his ancient draconic voice rang out. Though it was impossible for anyone else to understand the exact words, the intent was clear. With his command, the 5 sword arcs froze in place mid-air, as if time itself had stopped them. Everyone let out a collective breath of relief. All 10 dragon elders then turned their gaze downward in unison, their expressions sharpening. Their eyes began to glow, focusing their vision through the layers of stone and dirt to peer directly into the underground chamber where the disturbance had originated. What? How? These 2 questions echoed in each of their minds as they stared with wide eyes and stunned expressions. The underground room, which had been reinforced with one of the strongest materials in their possession, had been completely sliced apart, shattered into more than 5 large pieces, as if it were nothing but thin wood. And standing calmly in the middle of that destroyed space was Ash. He was holding a sword, its blade humming with power. The weapon had 2 distinct faces. One side was completely transparent, almost like glass, while the other was pitch black, absorbing all light. The humming sound continued to resonate from the sword, vibrating through the room and beyond. No one asked any questions. They didn't waste a single moment. The moment they saw the boy standing upright, they moved. In a flash, all 10 dragons rushed down with full force, their forms blurring with speed. Taylor, Ariel, and Christos were especially shocked. Just moments ago, they had left him severely wounded and barely conscious. Yet now he stood tall, unshaken, as if he had never been harmed. That sword, where did it come from? This question rang through every one of their minds like a bell. Within the blink of an eye, they formed a circle around Ash, surrounding him from all sides, their expressions tense and uncertain. Strong. Ash didn't know how else to describe the feeling that surged through him after holding Eclipse, but somehow, that single word felt like enough. It carried the weight of everything he had just experienced in that moment. He remembered how it began, how the loud humming sound from his djinn had suddenly filled the chamber. It wasn't slow or subtle. Along with the sound, the sword energy arcs rose sharply and immediately cut through the silence, slicing through the bindings wrapped around his body. But that was not the end of it. The sword arcs had continued forward without mercy, tearing through the walls and even reaching the upper floors. And then, as the dust and debris rained down, he had seen them. The 10 dragon elders were floating high above him, staring down into the broken chamber. Everything was crumbling. And then, in a matter of seconds, they stopped the sword arcs and then descended and surrounded him from every side, their expressions unreadable but sharp. Before any of the elders could speak, Ash raised his voice and said calmly, "You should not have left me alone." His voice echoed through the broken chamber. The dragons narrowed their eyes and stared at him with heightened attention. So what now? Are you going to fight all of us? Or are you planning to escape again using that teleportation of yours? Or maybe you are just going to hide like before? The gray dragon asked, his tone neither mocking nor amused, only sharp and challenging. Author's note: I am not putting the names of the dragons right now. I know most of you are not interested in them. I will name only the ones who will become important later. You are wrong. He cannot escape using his teleportation. As long as I am present here, he will never be able to use it. I will not let him, the space dragon said with calm confidence, his words firm and unshaken. Hearing that, Ash looked at them with half-lidded, tired eyes. A quiet chuckle escaped his lips. Stop me? If I truly wanted to run, I could have done it a long time ago. And believe me, none of you would have been able to stop me. No one replied. There was no need to. The proof was already standing in front of them. Ash was right there. He was not running away. Even with his face mostly covered by the torn cloth of his shirt, there was something unshakable in his stance. Something that made them all stop and listen. You know what? I have been thinking all this time. Why was I hiding? Why did I not want anyone to know who I am? His voice lowered slightly as he continued. There was silence in the air. No one answered. It is because of those damn novels. Ash's voice was steady, yet there was something bitter and tired in it. Something that had been buried for a long time and now surfaced. It's because I've read so many damn novels. And then, I started imagining myself as one of those protagonists. The ones who always hide their identity and then go boom. When they finally reveal it, everyone gasps, everyone reacts, and it's all dramatic. Taylor scoffed loudly, his face twitching with irritation. What bullshit are you? But before Taylor could finish his sentence, the aura of primordial core from Ash's body exploded outward. But it was not like before. This time, the pressure that came from him was more overwhelming and more ancient than before. A golden aura rose around Ash like a tide, vast and powerful. The air itself felt heavier as the ancient force swept across the space. In that moment, a glowing symbol, the third eye, appeared on Ash's forehead, radiating with a silvery light that pulsed with strength and mystery. Taylor froze for a second and almost took a step back. The other elders, too, were shaken. How is it possible? How can a child like him release an aura that feels so close to our level? The question echoed in their minds simultaneously, colliding with everything they believed to be true. Their understanding of the world was cracking. There was no logic that could explain what they were seeing. Don't interrupt me. Ash's voice was sharp and cold, piercing through the silence like a blade. It left no room for further interruption. So, where was I? He paused, then continued with a quiet breath. Oh right, I used to think of myself as a protagonist. But I was wrong. So damn wrong. Even if this world really is some kind of novel, that does not mean I have to live like one of those book characters. I have finally realized if I am going to live in this world, I have to live as myself. Not as someone copied from a story. The aura around him slowly calmed, but its presence was still there, silent and watchful like an ancient guardian. Although I am hiding my face right now, believe me, I also want to show it. I want to face everything openly. But maybe this is not the right time yet. A small smirk touched the corner of his lips, just barely visible under the cloth. But I do have some good news. His voice, while calm, carried a weight of finality. From now on, I am going to live like myself. I will do what I believe is right. I do not care what others think about me. Not even the people who are watching from above. Those arrogant ones who sit high up there and think they are gods. Chapter 148, Outer Space. This whole place is surrounded by a vast amount of space particles. Ash looked around calmly, his eyes wandering over the surroundings, as if the presence of the dragon elders meant nothing to him. He didn't even spare them a glance. The elders, watching his complete disregard, felt their anger building. It wasn't just arrogance, it was blatant disrespect. This human brat, Taylor muttered through gritted teeth. Unable to hold back his rising irritation, he turned his head slightly and sent a telepathic message to the white dragon beside him. Do you really expect us to hold back any longer? I can barely control myself anymore. No matter what plans you had involving him, he's far too dangerous. We need to subdue him now. Alarion, the white dragon, heard Taylor's message and simply let out a soft sigh. His expression remained calm as he responded aloud, his voice low but clear. Do as you wish, as long as he is breathing. Hearing that, Taylor's lips curled into a smile. The other dragons also seemed to relax a little. But just as Taylor opened his mouth and began to mutter under his breath, Domain X, Ash vanished. His third eye symbol glowed even more strongly, and in that light, Ash saw it clearly. The dragon mana, thick and ancient, swirling deep within each of the elders around him. Ash's gaze turned cold as he looked at the overwhelming amount of mana inside their bodies. It was enough to crush a city, to drown the skies in fire and wind, then slowly turned his focus back to the surrounding space mana. Omni thought, with those words echoing silently in his mind, the world around him slowed. And then within the slowed world, he finally looked at the description of Eclipse for the first time. Weapon name, Eclipse. Rank, growth type, current rank, apprentice.
Description.
Eclipse is a Chinese gem forged by a legendary blacksmith. Even before awakening, its potential was extraordinary. However, after resonating with the ancient runes, the sword underwent a mysterious transformation, unlocking latent abilities far beyond what its current rank would suggest. Abilities: unbreakable. The sword is completely indestructible. No force can break it. Life drain. It absorbs the enemy's life force. If the enemy is weak, it can drain them completely. If the enemy is strong, only a small amount is taken, enough to sustain the wielder in prolonged combat. Space cleave. After syncing with runes, it can cut through space and other hard materials. But how well it works depends on the user's control over space element. White triangle containing, small white triangle containing, small white triangle. He calmly looked at the abilities of the evolved Eclipse. He was satisfied with what he saw, but deep inside, he knew this was not everything. He could feel the sword, no, he could sense it, as if it was alive, as if it had a heartbeat of its own, waiting for his call like a loyal beast finally released from its chains. Looks like those sword auras released earlier from Eclipse must be connected to the ability called Space Cleave. And that symbol's at the last. It must be something strong, but it seems that the actual power depends on my mastery over the space element. And that's something I have no real experience with. Space, even in his past life, was a mysterious concept. It was something even the most brilliant scientists of Earth struggled to understand. Compared to that, lightning was more familiar to him. He had studied it. He had learned its properties as a science student. He understood how currents flowed, how charges moved, and how voltage arced across matter. But even with that knowledge, his control over lightning wasn't due to natural talent. In truth, most of it came from the Omni thought. That skill forced his brain to work harder than it ever should, allowing him to control every tiny particle of mana with insane precision. It drained his mind, but granted him near-perfect command. Without it, his elemental control was average at best. Just like his behavior sometimes. All bark, no bite. Even with his science background, he had no idea how this world's mana interacted with the concept of dimensional reality. I really don't know if those theories about space are even correct. I've barely scratched the surface when it comes to studying space. If space is a fabric, then a blade sharp enough and infused with spatial mana might be able to act like a needle, piercing through the weave, forcing a tear. By now, one of his mana cores had nearly recovered fully. Seeing this, he didn't waste a single second. He vanished from his position without a sound. His destination was the edge of the chamber, where the boundary of this isolated space lay hidden. Ash recalled everything he had ever learned about the concept of space from his previous world, compressing years of knowledge into a few heartbeats, and focused with all his mind. He forcefully gathered space mana around his sword, and slowly, a deep violet hue started to cover Eclipse. It shimmered faintly, like the edge of a black hole laced with purple starlight. This is my first time trying this. I really hope it works. Arriving at the far end of the hidden chamber, Ash narrowed his eyes and slashed downward with his full strength, pouring his mana and intent into that single strike. Everything happened so quickly that by the time the others noticed, Ash had already moved. His sword was already descending toward the hidden boundary, and they didn't even have enough time to react. Slash! Shit! That thought screamed through all of their minds in unison. They were completely caught off guard. Ash had spoken confidently earlier, claiming that he wouldn't run, and they had believed him. But the moment his speech ended, he disappeared in front of their eyes. There he is. The space dragon was the first to locate him, sensing the space mana gathering wildly around Eclipse like a brewing storm. What is that sword? Could it really be a divine relic? He didn't know, but what he did feel was something ancient, something that shouldn't exist in this era. The aura coming from that sword didn't just feel powerful, it felt primordial. But then, in the very next moment, his eyes widened in horror, and so did the eyes of the others. Stop that lunatic! He is trying to desture. He couldn't even finish his words. A long, crude-looking sword aura, raw and wild like a lightning bolt made of will, launched itself from Eclipse. It struck the upper boundary of the space, which had been hidden cleverly behind the illusion of the chamber's ceiling. And right there, a thin but perfectly clean cut appeared in the fabric of reality. It was just enough for a person to pass through, but the implications were massive. Ash had cut through space itself. I knew it. This is outer space. Crazy dragons. When Ash has observed the surrounding previously, he was already suspicious about the location of the chamber. Because the space mana around the isolated space pocket boundary was tightly packed, thick to the point it felt like an unbroken wall. There wasn't even a single gap where one could attack or make a cut in the space. That's when he decided to cleave the space using Eclipse's newly awakened ability. It wasn't something he had planned after thinking it through. There was no long pause, no deep calculations. It was simply his instinct pushing him forward. A gut feeling whispered that this was the right path, and more than that, this is the way that will cause the most chaos. Trusting that surge of wild intuition, Ash focused his will on the particles lining the path of his sword. With fine-tuned precision granted by Omni-Thought, he manipulated just enough of them to shift, disturbing their cohesion ever so slightly. In doing so, he created a line, a seam, a surgical incision within the compressed structure of space itself. It was almost effortless. The sword moved, and space listened. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that the action he had just performed wasn't something a person of his level should even be able to conceptualize, let alone achieve. His power, his attributes, and his very existence were beginning to break away from the rules of the world. He was becoming an anomaly, a disruption in the flow of reality where common sense no longer applied. Now, as he watched raw space mana pour inward like a rushing tide, rapidly enlarging the tier he had created, Ash narrowed his eyes. My guess was correct. He had noticed earlier how evenly the space mana was distributed across the boundary of the room. The concentration had no natural flow, and only one thing matched that strange stillness in his mind. Outer space. Ash's gaze flickered toward the dragon elders. They were shouting, rushing toward him with enough force to tear the sky apart. But even with Omni-Thought active, their speed blurred his vision. He could only see distorted streaks of color barreling toward him. So he didn't wait. He threw his body into the newly opened void, crossing through the spatial incision in an instant. And just before his presence fully vanished, he whispered under his breath, "D'explosion." The moment the word fell from his lips, mysterious symbols appeared along with a glowing sphere of lightning bloomed where he was standing, spinning with multiple cores, and it detonated in a violent blast that filled the chamber's edge. Everything happened within the blink of an eye. The explosion blossomed with violent brilliance, shaking the foundation of the entire chamber and forcing the rushing elders to halt mid-charge. "Damn it!" Alarion shouted. slamming his fist into the floor hard enough to crack the reinforced stone beneath him. "Close the space. Otherwise, everything will be destroyed," he barked, his voice laced with panic. While dragons could survive in the vacuum of space, using mana to sustain themselves instead of oxygen, even they had limitations. In that vast void, movement was nearly impossible. If they tried to use mana recklessly, it would simply vanish into the endless vacuum. But the biggest problem wasn't survival. It was destruction. "Close it now, or this entire realm will collapse," the space dragon shouted in panic. "But what about that bastard?" the dark dragon growled, still watching the tier widening. "You want to chase him into outer space? Fine, go ahead. But first, close this damn thing." With no more time left, the dragons abandoned all hesitation. As one, they raised their voices and cast the most powerful technique in their arsenal. All of them shouted in unison, "Domain expansion." Chapter 149. Stealing One. "It feels comfortable," Ash thought to himself as he quietly looked around. He was gently floating in outer space, his body suspended in a vast sea of nothingness. There was only the endless darkness surrounding him, broken by the stars that shimmered across the sky like scattered jewels. They were everywhere, stretching so far that no end could be seen. This beautiful, Ash couldn't help but admire the silent beauty of outer space. Thanks to the rune of space, he felt unusually comfortable here. There was no pressure on his body, and he wasn't even having any trouble breathing. However, the one issue was movement. He was completely still, drifting without direction, and there was nothing he could do to move himself. "Well, it doesn't matter. I had no plans to run around in space anyway." His gaze slowly drifted back toward where he came from, and he noticed the small tear in space still lingering behind him. Because of that small rip, the hidden space the dragons had concealed was now partially exposed. This hidden space is small, around the size of a Rubik's Cube. Could it be some kind of artifact holding that hidden dimension together? Ash could only guess, but in the end, his decision to escape into outer space had been based on two solid reasons. First, chasing him into outer space would be extremely difficult for the Dragon Elders, and even if they did manage to follow him, simply moving around would be a challenge, and there was a good chance that none of them would dare to take that risk at all. This hidden space is revolving around planet Acumia. Is it under the planet's gravitational field? Well, doesn't matter right now. Absolute concealment. He silently activated the skill, letting the concealment wrap around him like a veil. Then, without hesitation, he teleported. In a blink, Ash appeared back inside the hidden space. His entrance was completely unnoticed. No one had sensed a thing. Carefully hiding behind a pile of broken rubble, his eyes watched as the Dragon Elders all chanted in unison, "Domain expansion." Shit. Ash immediately felt a chill. Even with everything he had, he wasn't sure whether his concealment skill would still work inside someone else's domain. It was a risky thought, and he wasn't ready to test that theory right now. Without wasting time, he escaped again, reappearing on the other side of the large hall. But his panic turned out to be unnecessary. The domains the Elders had activated didn't feel overly intense. Instead, a transparent wave of energy flowed out from each of them, merging into one unified barrier. That scared me for a second, but it's just a normal domain. Domains were generally classified into three main categories: normal domains, elemental domains, and weapon domains. There were also hybrid domains, though cultivating one was a far more complicated process. Elemental and weapon domains, as their names suggested, required high levels of mastery and understanding over a particular element or weapon. Normal domains, on the other hand, were simpler. They were formed without any deep elemental or weapon affinity. They just required mana, a strong intent, and a moment of enlightenment. To break through the barrier of Grandmaster rank and reach the legendary rank, forming a normal domain was the main requirement. However, to go beyond the legendary rank and step into the realm of mythical status, one had to form either an elemental domain or a weapon domain. In this process, the normal domain acted as the foundation upon which the higher domains were built. These domains varied in power depending on the user's knowledge, mastery, and the quality of the domain itself. Even one could drastically affect a person's strength. And to rise even higher, to become a saint, a person had to fully become one with their domain. That step might sound simple, but in reality it was far from easy. Normal domains don't have much range, and their power mostly depends on the willpower and mana of the user. From the looks of it, they're just expanding their domains around the cracks in the space to suppress the space mana from leaking out. It made sense. Elemental and weapon domains impose intense force and rewrite the environment's laws, so using them near fragile space cracks could worsen the damage. In contrast, normal domains are gentler and better suited for stabilizing unstable areas without causing further collapse. Let's give them a bit more of a headache. Otherwise, they won't show me the way of important places. The second reason Ash had escaped into outer space was to make them believe he was either gone or dead. His plan was to disappear completely and then reappear quietly from the shadows. After all, they had taken his space ring, his armor, and even the necklace he had prepared as a gift for Alicia. Now, it was time to take everything back, along with a little something extra. I can't just return empty-handed now that things have come this far, can I? Even if I have to drench everything in chaos and destruction, I won't leave without reclaiming what's mine. With that thought burning in his mind, Ash slashed toward the boundary on the opposite side of the vast chamber. Slash! And right after, without hesitation, he teleported himself. Push the space mana back. I will seal the entrance, shouted the space dragon, his voice firm and commanding, as he was the only one among them with the deepest understanding of spatial forces. The others didn't argue. They focused their mana and, through the unified strength of their overlapping domains, they managed to slow the tide of invading space mana. But just as Stellaris, the space dragon, prepared to begin the sealing process, Shireen, the sharp, unmistakable sound of a sword slicing through the air echoed across the chamber. All heads turned toward the source. Christos cursed under his breath. Shit! He hasn't left. Alarian's eyes narrowed. Without wasting another second, he issued a clear, decisive order. 4 of you stabilize that side. The rest, stay here with Stellaris and help seal this area. He then turned to the remaining 2. The last 2 find that rat. He's still somewhere inside this space. Do not be fooled again. Also, check those 2 places. Make sure nothing happens. As his command echoed in the large chamber, Ariel and Taylor moved swiftly, heading in opposite directions to search for Ash. The others followed Alarian's orders without hesitation, taking positions as instructed. Hidden from view, Ash quietly observed. His eyes locked onto Ariel, and without making a sound, he began to follow his path. What is happening here? Ariel moved cautiously through the dim corridor, his steps steady yet alert as he scanned the area. He was determined to search every corner of this hidden space. That brat is dangerous. He endured that level of torture and still had the patience to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Ariel clicked his tongue in regret. It was the first time in all his years that he had come across someone like Ash. Unpredictable, tenacious, and dangerously composed. Let's check the rooms first. After that, I will go there. Although the place wasn't that large in terms of overall size, it had an unusual number of rooms, and some of them were exceptionally spacious. He began checking each room at high speed, unaware that someone was quietly following right behind him, tracking his every move. After Ariel had searched at least 10 rooms, Ash's eyes caught sight of something in one of the rooms. His belongings, quietly resting in a corner untouched. He must be in a hurry to go somewhere. Did he really overlook this? Ash couldn't be sure, but when he picked up his space ring, he quickly scanned through its contents. Most of his items were still there. Everything looked intact except for the blood crystal, which was missing. He touched his armor, and within seconds, it responded to his will and donned itself over him automatically. Now fully equipped once more, Ash silently resumed tailing Ariel. After about a minute of silent movement through the winding corridor, they reached the very end. Is that a wall? Don't tell me there's another hidden door behind that? And to his dismay, that's exactly what it was. Ash watched closely as Ariel placed his palm against the wall, his fingers tracing a precise pattern across its surface. In response, the wall shifted with a low, rumbling sound, slowly revealing a concealed door behind it. Without making a sound, Ash followed behind Ariel, and what lay beyond that hidden entrance made him pause for a moment. Is this a library? A library far grander than the Academy's main library. The scale of the room was almost absurd, making one wonder just what kind of artifact or spatial compression technique was used to store such an enormous space within a concealed chamber. But Ash didn't have time to marvel at it. Silently, he left behind a small location anchor within the library, then teleported himself away, back toward the hall where the Dragon Elders were focused on sealing the space crack. I can return there later. Right now, I need to check where that red dragon went. It might be an important place too. When he appeared in the main hall again, one of the space cracks had already been sealed, and the other was on the verge of closing. The elders were spread out, scanning the area carefully. Some were still sealing the final gap, while others were clearly on alert, making sure Ash wouldn't suddenly reappear and tear open another exit. Looks like I need to move fast. He didn't waste time trying to create another crack. Instead, he hurried toward the direction Taylor had taken. As he moved past multiple rooms, each one contained something, but it was useless for him. He must be at the end. And sure enough, at the end of the corridor, here also the hidden wall was closing and was almost fully shut. Ash hurriedly teleported himself inside, and just as he appeared within, the red dragon was standing right in front of him. Chapter 150. Stealing 2. Ash hurried toward the direction Taylor had taken. As he moved past multiple rooms, each one contained something, but it was useless for him, nothing he needed or cared about. He must be at the end. And sure enough, at the end of the corridor, here also, the hidden wall was closing and was almost fully shut. Ash hurriedly teleported himself inside, and just as he appeared within, the red dragon was standing right in front of him with his back turned toward him. Seeing that, Ash froze for a moment as he looked around. Treasury. What stood before him was the treasury, and it was even larger than the library he had seen before. It was grand, vast, and filled with an ancient silence that made it feel even more imposing. But Ash ignored that, and looked up at one of the corners of the roof, and quietly appeared there. He left another one of his teleport anchors at that spot. With that bastard here, I won't be able to look at the things in peace or explore properly. I will return after some time once he is gone. Thinking that, just as he was about to teleport himself away, he heard Taylor mutter in a low and annoyed voice, I don't understand why Alaran sent me here. I wanted to catch that rat bastard instead. Hearing that, Ash stopped in his tracks. Sent them here? Weren't they supposed to be searching for me? Wait, does that mean Alarion gave Ariel and Taylor different instructions other than what I heard? Something specific? I don't get it. Why does he think that Brat would even try to enter the treasury or the egg chambers? They are so well hidden. I doubt he could even find them, no matter how much he tries. From Taylor's words, Ash could sense the irritation in his tone. But more importantly, he understood the hidden meaning. Alarion must have given them different instructions separately, possibly through telepathy or some secret method of communication. That's why they had gone to these two locations instead of searching elsewhere. So that means the egg chamber is also here? But I felt the security here was pretty lax. If someone knows the pattern, they can easily enter it. What Ash failed to consider in that moment was that simply reaching this place was the real challenge, not just opening the hidden door. That's when Taylor stepped forward and raised both of his hands toward the small dragon statues placed symmetrically on either side of where he stood. As his palms made contact, he infused them with his dragon mana. In response, the statues pulsed faintly, and the floor in front of him slowly began to shift, revealing a hidden passage leading downward. These lizards really are overly cautious, Ash muttered in his thoughts, reflecting on the elaborate ways the dragons had gone to conceal their secrets. Taylor proceeded down the revealed path, vanishing into the depths below, but Ash found himself pausing in place, conflicted. My mana is too low. His mana reserves, which had already been worn thin, were now nearing complete exhaustion. And to make matters worse, it wasn't regenerating like it usually did. Most of the ambient mana must be blocked by space interference. But even then, shouldn't space mana at least be flowing into me? That's strange. He didn't understand why this was happening, but the uncertainty made him hesitate about whether he should follow Taylor deeper into the hidden chamber. At some point, he had stopped supplying mana to his armor, finally starting to grasp how to manage his strength and presence without drawing too much attention. I still have enough mana for a single escape with concealment activated. Should be fine. Making up his mind, Ash silently leapt down from his perch and landed lightly on his feet with practiced ease. But before going down, should I grab the most valuable things from here first? Ash looked at the large amount of treasures scattered throughout the room, but his priority remained unchanged in his mind. Let's head deeper. I don't think anything truly valuable would be placed near the entrance. And if I happen to miss something right now, I can always come back later to check properly. With that thought, he moved forward quickly, relying only on his physical strength. His movements were smooth, fluid, and fast enough that he seemed like a blur passing through the halls. While advancing, he activated his Omni-Thought ability, allowing his mind to process everything around him with clarity, even as his body moved at high speed. Every item, artifact, and object that entered his vision was briefly analyzed. Ho, it looks like they really have almost everything stored here. His steps came to a stop in front of a small, gray space ring resting on a pedestal. The band was engraved with the shape of a dragon, its carved eyes staring lifelessly forward. A plaque stood beside it, providing details about the item's function and capacity. Ash glanced at the description and raised his eyebrows slightly. The size of this space ring is actually twice that of mine. His current space ring was already massive, almost the size of a football stadium, and it wasn't even half full. But the one before him could hold twice as much. I can store those bones in this. It will come in handy later. Without hesitation, he bound the ring to himself and continued moving deeper into the treasury. On his way, he passed by all sorts of valuable items. Precious dragon hearts, rare materials, ancient artifacts, but he didn't stop. Right now, he needed to hurry. He had no idea when that underground passage might close again. As he reached the center of the treasury, something familiar caught his attention. It was the cursed eye and the fragment, items he had earned in the trial which the dragons had taken from him. Both were lying there casually, placed together as if they were of little value. Without pausing, Ash quietly picked them up and slipped them into his pocket, not sparing them another glance, before continuing his path forward. A/N. I had completely forgotten to mention the cursed eye and the fragment in the previous chapters, but I've fixed it now. You can check it if you want in the chapter. Torture. Just as he moved 20 steps forward, he found exactly what he was looking for. There, placed carefully on a pedestal, was an hourglass filled with shimmering sand. Rune of Time. Without wasting even a second to glance at the description written beneath it, he immediately shoved it into his pocket and turned around, moving quickly back toward the entrance. I can't absorb the Rune of Time yet. There's still a hidden condition I need to fulfill before I can truly claim it. But the artifact's ability on its own is already valuable enough. It can speed up the flow of time for the person using it, and that alone holds incredible potential. But it's not suited for combat. It can only accelerate time for one person, and the moment someone else steps into the area of effect, the power immediately cancels out. That's why, despite its usefulness, its practical value among dragons was limited. After all, dragons already lived for thousands of years. There was hardly any reason for them to rush or slow down time. What use was temporal acceleration to a race that already viewed centuries as fleeting moments? He already knew the artifact's functions, so there was no reason to waste more time standing there. He had already spent far too long wandering the dragon continent. I've obtained what I came for. Still, if I could also secure a dragon egg, that would make this trip truly worthwhile. Ash had been planning to steal 1 or 2 dragon eggs, one for himself and another for Alicia. I'm pretty sure she would love a dragon as a pet. It can also protect her in the future, and she would definitely take care of it better than most. Reaching the entrance again, he saw that the door on the floor was still open, which brought a bit of relief. Without hesitation, he descended the stairs quickly, wasting no time. He moved swiftly, and within minutes, he descended deep beneath the surface, where his eyes were met with a sight that truly deserved to be called an egg chamber. The chamber was huge, made of old stone, with high ceilings that curved like the inside of a grand temple. Soft light came from glowing runes carved into the walls, filling the space with a calm, golden glow. The air felt warm and thick with mana, giving the whole place a quiet and powerful feeling. Dragon eggs were spread all across the chamber, each one sitting in its own black stone socket. There were almost 100 of them, and every egg was different. Some were blue, some gold, some silver or green, and even a few were pure black. Some eggs had tiny sparks of energy on them, small flames, bits of lightning, or light frost gently covering the shell. All of them gave off a sense of life, like they were waiting for the right moment to awaken. The place felt like the beginning of something big, like the future was sleeping in front of him. But even with so many eggs, one stood out right away. In the center of the room, placed a little higher than the rest, was a small red egg. It was much smaller than the others, almost fragile-looking, but somehow it grabbed more attention than any other. Its shell looked like red crystal, shining like a ruby, smooth and glowing softly. A golden mist swirled around it, floating gently like a soft breath, making it feel even more special. Ash narrowed his eyes, his gaze fixed. He couldn't quite explain why, but from that egg, he felt a strange purity, something untainted, ancient, and sacred in a way he had never felt before. A small grin formed under his mask. Chapter 151. Stealing 3. Looking at the egg placed exactly at the center, a grin slowly spread across Ash's face beneath the cloth mask hiding his expression. Then, his attention shifted toward Taylor, who was moving quietly among the many dragon eggs. I expected him to be fuming, desperate to catch me, but it seems like he actually knows how to control his emotions. Ash crouched low, hiding himself behind one of the large platforms that held a dragon egg. It was wide and tall enough to completely shield him from sight. His eyes, however, remained fixed on the red egg in the center of the chamber. In all the novels and manhwas he had read, one thing was always consistent. The rarest or most important treasure was always placed right in the center. If I go for any other egg, there's a good chance that dragon will notice something. It's safer to grab the one at the center first, and then I can snatch another on my way out and escape in a single move. At that moment, Taylor came to a stop in front of one of the crimson-red eggs, not the central one but one nearby. He gently placed his hand on the smooth shell and spoke in a soft, affectionate tone. "When will you come out, child? Your mother may not be here anymore, but your father is still waiting." His voice carried a deep warmth, the kind only a parent could show. A gentle, proud smile appeared on his face. "I'm just glad that you'll definitely grow up to be strong. Stronger than me. Maybe even stronger than even your mother." Dragon eggs were mysterious and unpredictable. They did not hatch quickly like normal creatures. Their incubation periods could range from decades to even centuries, depending on the egg. But the longer the egg remained unhatched, the stronger the dragon inside was believed to become. Ash continued to watch the interaction in silence. His expression didn't change, but something flickered briefly in his eyes. "Let's not think too much about it. I already have enough on my mind. If I dwell on this any longer, I might actually start to feel like I'm the villain in all of this." Quietly, and with sharp awareness, he began to move again, step by step, making his way toward the red egg placed at the exact center, while keeping Taylor's movements in the corner of his vision. Reaching the center platform, Ash tried to store the egg into his space ring, but the egg did not budge. "Alright, it's a living being. I can't store it in the space ring." Realizing that, he quietly held the egg in his hands. The moment his fingers wrapped around its surface, a strange sensation flowed through him. The egg felt strangely warm, not like heat from fire, but more like the warmth of life itself. Its smooth surface was solid and polished like ruby, yet it had a softness beneath, as if something alive was breathing gently inside. The faint golden mist swirling around it reacted lightly to his touch, as if recognizing him or acknowledging his presence. It didn't resist. Instead, it accepted his hands as they cradled it, almost like a quiet welcome. But as soon as he lifted the egg off the platform, everything changed. A deep red light instantly spread across the chamber. An alarm lit up across the walls. A sharp, echoing sound rang out, shaking the calm silence of the space. "Shit!" Ash cursed in his mind and immediately turned to look at Taylor. And Taylor was staring back at him. His expression was completely different from earlier. His face was darkened by shadow, and his eyes were glowing with a fierce red light. A wild and chaotic aura surged around him, making the atmosphere feel heavy and dangerous. That calm, almost fatherly look from before was completely gone. Ash instantly understood the danger and didn't waste even a single breath. He didn't even consider picking up another egg. There was no time. With the egg still in his hands, he activated Transcendent Step, but at that very moment, Taylor's figure flickered and vanished, appearing right in front of him with terrifying speed. A dragon claw shot forward, aiming straight for Ash's heart. The air tore with the strike, but he was lucky. The teleportation completed just in time, and his figure disappeared from the chamber. Left behind, Taylor stood still, breathing heavily. His claw hung in the air, stained faintly with blood. His red eyes burned with fury as he roared, voice echoing through the egg chamber like thunder. "Damn you humans!" The words came out not just in rage but from deep pain, a scream that shook the walls and rumbled through the very foundation of the place. Immediately, Taylor reached for the communication artifact and roared into it with fury. "That human stole an egg!" His shout echoed like thunder in the ears of all the dragon elders, shaking their hearts with disbelief and fury. For a moment, everyone froze. Then the pressure exploded. Some widened their eyes in shock, while others flared their auras uncontrollably. A few growled in disbelief, as if they could not believe what they had just heard. Then, Alarion's expression changed for the first time. "Yes!" The dragon elders roared in unison, their voices shaking the sealed dimension, the pressure rising to unbearable levels. Meanwhile, far away on the dragon continent, Ash released the breath he had unknowingly been holding as he appeared inside one of the hidden caves he had stayed in before during his time on the continent. His body collapsed to the ground, and his hands were still holding the dragon egg tightly. "My mana is exhausted." He could feel the weight pressing down on him, his concealment was undone, and fatigue was catching up with him fast. But that was not all. Just then, a sharp pain surged through his chest. He looked down and saw that the area around his chest was badly burned. Blood was flowing out from 5 deep holes near his heart. "I am still injured. If I had been even a second late, my heart would have been destroyed, and the egg might have slipped from my hands while I was dying." Ash was more worried about the egg falling from his hands and him teleporting away from the egg chamber without it, rather than dying itself. But now wasn't the time to dwell on such thoughts. "Still, I need to rest. I have to recover my mana, just for a while." But as always, luck never favored him. Barely 5 minutes had passed when the cave began to tremble violently, and then it exploded without warning. Boom! The explosion was deafening, shaking the entire area as smoke and debris filled the air, signaling the next wave of chaos that was already upon him. "I found the thief! Contact the elders!" One of the young dragons roared in his full dragon form, wings flaring as he hovered above the shattered treetops. His golden eyes locked onto the figure fleeing below. "Are you an idiot? What if the egg breaks? Don't just blast him!" Another dragon shouted, his voice full of panic, flapping furiously as he tried to hold back the others. "You're the idiot!" The first dragon snapped, flames curling at the edge of his jaws. "That egg is strong enough to survive a few attacks. Stop acting like it's made of glass." While they bickered above, Ash, lying beneath a collapsed boulder, quietly shoved the stone off his body with all his remaining strength. The red egg, still glowing faintly in his arms, remained untouched, resting peacefully as if unaware of the chaos surrounding it. They found me this fast, but when I entered the continent, no one even noticed, and that too without using absolute concealment. His thoughts were frantic, his breath sharp and rough. Shit, I have to run before I get surrounded from all sides. He didn't wait to think further. His instincts screamed louder than his wounds, and his body reacted like it was possessed. He darted in the opposite direction of the dragons, sprinting across the broken landscape, his arms wrapped protectively around the egg. He had barely taken a few strides when, boom! A blast of fire exploded behind him, shattering trees and sending burning splinters flying through the air. Damn! The shockwave slammed into his back and hurled him forward, but instead of crashing, Ash twisted midair and landed in a roll. Using the force to fuel his momentum, he shot forward even faster, wind ripping past his ears and leaves brushing across his skin. He ran like a madman through the dense forest, his breath ragged, clutching the egg close. Above him, shadows blotted out the sunlight as more dragons began to flock in his direction. Their roars echoed through the sky, primal and furious, shaking the very air itself. The ground trembled with each wing beat, and the scent of fire, ash, and raw mana hung heavy in the atmosphere. Time blurred into pain and adrenaline. Around 15 minutes passed as Ash weaved and dodged the elemental blasts raining down from the sky. Boom! Another explosion lit up the forest ahead, tearing open the ground and sending another wave of smoke and dirt into the sky. Damn it! How many more? Then, roar! These dragons are seriously crazy, completely out of their minds. Boom! Just then, another massive explosion rocked the ground behind him, sending a shockwave that nearly knocked Ash flat on his face. Dirt flew everywhere, and he stumbled, coughing as he scrambled to his feet and started running. I swear, you lizards, leave me alone or I'm gonna cook you all into stew. I'll turn your whole clan into freaking burnt chicken. His bold declaration echoed through the valley, only to be answered by a thunderous roar and a blazing burst of dragon fire. Roar! Boom! These damn lizards, I swear, why the hell did I steal that egg? What was I thinking? Am I stupid? I am definitely stupid. Oh my life! Suddenly, a voice thundered from above like a broken loudspeaker. Make sure that thief does not escape. Ash barely had time to react as more dragons swooped down from the sky, their wings slicing through the clouds like blades, eyes glowing like they were all on a revenge arc. Oh, come on. That was one egg. Just one. You guys have hundreds. You could have at least put up a sign or something. But his desperate whining didn't help. The dragons only roared louder, fire building in their throats as they dived straight for him. Ash ducked behind a rock, his heart hammering like a war drum. I have to endure. Endure until my mana is full in at least one core. After that, I will leave this continent within a heartbeat. These long-tailed, overgrown turkeys are chasing me like I stole their bank password. Another dragon breath exploded a tree nearby, sending flaming splinters flying past his ear. He yelped and rolled over the ground, slapping at the sparks on his sleeve. Just leave me alone, otherwise. Boom! You idiots! The dragons clearly didn't care about his speech on proper stolen egg etiquette. They answered with more fire. Ash kept running, flailing like a madman, his eyes wide with panic and regret. If I somehow survive this, I am never stealing dragon eggs again. I swear. Okay, maybe I'll think twice. Depends on the egg. And just like that, Ash found himself in this chaotic mess. Dragons behind him, fire all around, a stolen egg cradled in his arms, and no time left to think. Chapter 152, Ash Impulsiveness. Although it felt like Ash was showing too much emotion, in reality he was doing it deliberately, only to make himself appear vulnerable in front of the young dragons. 15 minutes have passed. My core is only halfway filled with mana. I need to stall for at least 15 more minutes. If I can manage that, I'll have just enough mana to escape this place safely. Boom! Another burst of fire breath swept past him, the intense heat grazing his body. His clothes caught flame at the edges, and patches of his skin burned, but both were quickly healed. Ash's figure moved like a blur through the forest. He was no longer suppressing his strength. Each of his steps cracked the earth beneath him, and the resulting force pushed him forward like a missile, propelling him faster and faster through the trees. If he truly wanted to escape, he could have simply activated absolute concealment and used Transcendent Step to vanish completely. The dragons wouldn't have found even a trace of him. But he didn't do that. I want to test my strength. I don't really know how powerful I've become, but fighting a dragon, even briefly, wouldn't that be kind of fun? With that reckless yet eager thought, he surged forward with even more speed, like a wild gust of wind tearing through the forest. Swish, swish, swish. He moved in a sharp zigzag motion between the trees, deliberately weaving through them to block the line of sight of the dragons chasing him. It wasn't just for escape, it was to confuse and irritate them, force them to make mistakes, and buy him the time he needed. But first, I have to make sure the egg is safe. That's the most important thing right now. Ash glanced down at the egg securely cradled in his arms. He muttered quietly to himself, "Even if it will consume a portion of my mana, it's worth the cost to protect you." Absolute Concealment X Transcendent Step. The moment he activated the skills, his figure shimmered and disappeared, vanishing from the senses of the dragons behind him. On the dragon continent, in a place hidden by illusion and layers of deceit, Solareth stood silently, his figure half concealed by the dense trees, while his glowing eyes stared ahead with a calm intensity. Those mystical eyes shimmered like burning embers in the night as he watched Ash running across the forest floor with a dragon egg securely held in his hands. Did he really steal a dragon egg? That guy is truly insane. Solareth muttered under his breath, still trying to process what he was seeing. He had originally thought Ash had come here searching for something important, something with greater purpose or meaning. But to think he actually came here just to steal an egg. He trailed off, feeling a faint sting of disappointment in his heart. His own child had once been taken from him, and now, thinking about how the dragon parents would feel after losing their unborn young, his chest tightened with a dull ache. He then shifted his gaze to the 5 young dragons that were chasing Ash closely. They moved like swift shadows, following his trail without hesitation or delay. But why is no dragon waking up? I thought all this noise and chaos would be more than enough to wake them. He wondered aloud, his brows furrowed in thought. As he watched, the 5 dragons suddenly came to a stop and began looking around with sharp, alert eyes. They were clearly confused, and to Solareth's surprise, Ash was nowhere in sight. Where did he disappear to? Solareth muttered in confusion, still scanning the area. But just then, a calm voice sounded beside him, low and steady, yet entirely without presence. "Who are you looking for?" Startled by the sudden voice, Solareth instinctively prepared to strike, his energy flaring. But at the very last moment, he paused as he realized who it was. "You? How are you here? I just saw you running seconds ago," Solareth said in disbelief, his voice still laced with shock. Ash didn't answer the question. Instead, he asked one of his own, his tone calm and completely serious. "Will you hold on to this egg for a moment? I'll be back soon. I just want to spar with those dragons for a bit." Hearing such a shameless and absurd request, Solareth's eye twitched. He immediately grabbed Ash by the collar and lifted him slightly, his expression filled with restrained fury as he demanded an answer. "Why did you steal a dragon egg? Do you even realize what that means? Do you understand how much pain a parent?" He stopped mid-sentence, just as his anger reached its peak. It was the egg. At a distance, he hadn't noticed anything strange about it. But now that it was so close, now that he could feel its aura more clearly, something began to feel wrong. "What is this?" he thought, his gaze narrowing. His eyes glowed faintly as he peered deeper into the egg's surface. This isn't a dragon egg. His body stiffened slightly, and the grip on Ash's collar loosened as his thoughts raced. But how can this creature still be alive? I thought every single one of them had perished long ago. His expression turned complicated, full of emotions he couldn't name. He slowly let go of Ash, his hands trembling faintly from the sudden shift in realization. Ash had been ready to apologize, sensing the rising anger in Salareth's voice. But before he could say a word, Salareth interrupted him and spoke calmly. Well, it's fine. I'll look after the egg. Go wherever you want, he said casually, waving his hand as if brushing away a fly. But his eyes, now wide and gleaming, remained locked on the egg with an intense, almost childlike curiosity. Ash was confused by the sudden change in behavior, but he knew better than to question it. He didn't want to test his luck, especially not now. The Dragon Elders could arrive at any moment. Though I still don't understand what's taking them so long to get here. With that thought, he canceled his absolute concealment and activated Transcendent Step, disappearing without leaving a trace behind. What is happening? Why are you all still here? Taylor asked sharply, his eyes narrowing as he saw the other elders gathering inside the egg chamber instead of pursuing Ash. The only one missing was Ariel, who was still stationed at the library, keeping watch. We were just about to go after him. We even received word about his location, Stellaris replied, his tone calm yet cautious. Then what are you doing here? Taylor demanded again, visibly irritated. His voice echoed slightly in the chamber, filled with tension. Stellaris looked at him and sighed before answering. I don't know. Alarion stopped us. He told us not to chase after the thief and instead ordered us all to gather here. Taylor's expression grew darker, and his patience began to wear thin. He took a step forward, glaring directly at Alarion. What is the meaning of this, Alarion? We follow your orders out of respect, not because we're bound by them. But that doesn't mean you can make us dance to your whims without giving us a reason. What exactly are you trying to do here? The other elders also turned their eyes to Alarion. Though they didn't voice their discontent openly, their sharp gazes made their dissatisfaction clear. There was anger simmering beneath their silence. Alarion, however, said nothing at first. Instead, his gaze shifted to the center of the chamber where the small red egg used to rest. That spot was now empty. A quiet pause followed. Then, without a word, he slowly pulled out an old identity token from within his robes and held it up. The token was palm-sized, forged from deep black metal streaked with crimson veins that pulsed faintly like a living heart. At its center, a golden dragon eye was carved from crystal, glowing softly with power. Surrounding it, the curved outline of dragon wings formed a circle, as if guarding the eye in silence. The moment the token came into view, the atmosphere in the room shifted drastically. Every elder froze in place. Their anger vanished like smoke in the wind, replaced by shock. Their eyes widened, and even Taylor's mouth fell slightly open. Do you all recognize what this is? Alarion asked softly, his voice completely composed. The fury and frustration he had shown earlier when the egg was stolen were gone, replaced by calm solemnity. Christos stepped forward, his voice trembling as he spoke. How could we not recognize it? That is the identity token of the Dragon King. Yes, it is, Alarion confirmed with a nod. Before the Dragon King vanished, he told me something only I was allowed to know. Then, with the egg chamber silent and everyone listening intently, Alarion began to share the Dragon King's final message. Words that would change everything they thought they knew. Flashback of the Dragon King's words. Take this, Alarion. But my king, this is... Alarion stuttered, his voice filled with hesitation. He was still not strong enough, yet the king was entrusting him with such a precious identity token. Looking at the young and unsure face of Alarion, the Dragon King let out a light chuckle and said, Don't worry about it. Just keep it with you and don't tell anyone. I know that in the future you will become much more capable than now, capable enough to look after our race. Think of it as a responsibility I am passing down to you." Hearing the king's words, Alarion's heart began to beat wildly, his chest rising and falling as the weight of the moment settled in. He immediately knelt even deeper and said with unwavering determination, "Please tell me, my king, what this subordinate needs to do. I will fulfill it, even if I have to lay down my life for it." He spoke those words in the ancient draconic tongue, forming an oath that would bind him through blood and soul. His vow was absolute. Looking at Alarion, the Dragon King smiled in satisfaction before speaking again. "Do you know about the egg placed at the center of the egg chamber?" "Yes, my king. The egg you brought with you one day. If this is about protecting it, then I swear I will." "No, it's not that," the king interrupted gently, shaking his head. "That egg is not mine, as everyone believes. I do not even have a mate, so how could I have a child? That egg was entrusted to me by a close friend, someone who gave it to me on her deathbed." The Dragon King's voice became quieter, more tired, as if burdened by invisible weight. "My own lifespan is also reaching its end. Unless I manage to break into the next realm, it will be nearly impossible for me to survive much longer." "My king!" "Listen first, Alarion. Do not speak yet." Alarion instantly fell silent, his expression turning solemn as he waited for the king's next words. "Remember this well. Once I am gone, many people will try to infiltrate our lands. They will come with many reasons, some with greed, others with hunger for power. But among them there will be someone who is fated to take that egg. If you see such a person, let him leave peacefully. Do not try to stop him. I am giving you this token because it will alert you the moment that egg is removed from its resting place. That way you will know when to act, and more importantly, when to stand still. Remember, my child, the future I can see is broken and full of darkness. Every time I try to look ahead, I lose more of my life force. But I have seen enough to know this. If you harm that person, it might bring ruin to our race. You can capture or kill other intruders as needed. But if it is the one fated to take the egg, let him go. No weapon will work on him. No force can stop him. And if you do anything to him, you will only be calling a disaster upon us all." "I understand, my king," Alarion said, his voice heavy with resolve. "I will remember your words and carry them as law. I swear it." Chapter 153, Fighting the Dragons. "So, does that mean that, human?" one of the elders began, his voice faltering with disbelief. "How? Could you not tell us something so important?" another elder asked, his tone filled with a mix of confusion and frustration. "Yes, he is the one the king told me about," Alarion replied steadily, his eyes firm as they met the others. "When Taylor informed me about the stolen egg, the token reacted for the first time in all these years." Hearing his words, a deep silence fell over the place. No one spoke. Every elder stood still, their minds overwhelmed, trying to process what this revelation truly meant. "So, if it wasn't the egg of our race, then which race does it belong to?" the Gray Dragon elder asked, his expression filled with concern and uncertainty. Alarion shook his head slightly and replied, "I don't know. The king never told me about that." He looked down for a moment before continuing. "In fact, what worries me more is that the king explicitly warned me not to harm the one who takes the egg. And yet, without knowing, we have already tortured him." His words seemed to cast a heavy shadow across the chamber. Taylor's expression darkened, his gaze dropping to the floor. Even Christos looked visibly troubled, his face tense and full of regret. Taylor gritted his teeth before speaking again. "Then, why don't we just kill him? He's still weak. If we finish him off now, all of this mess will be over. We won't need to think about what comes next." But his words were abruptly cut off. Slap! The sound echoed loud and sharp as Christos struck him across the face. Everyone flinched at the suddenness. "Did you not hear what I just said?" Christos growled, his voice filled with restrained fury. "The king said no weapon will work on him. No force can stop him. Are you seriously letting your rage blind you so much that you're ready to throw away the words of our king? His hands were clenched tightly at his sides, his voice low but trembling with the force of emotions he had been holding back. In truth, Christos had never wanted to harm Ash. Even back then, he suspected that Ash was chosen by the throne. And now, hearing Alarion confirm what he had always suspected, there was no more room for doubt in his heart. "What should we do now, Alarion?" Christos asked, his voice low but heavy with the weight of uncertainty. Everyone looked at him with silent expectation, hoping he could find a way to fix what had already spiraled out of their control. Alarion let out a long breath, his expression calm yet solemn. "We apologize," he said firmly, without hesitation. "There's no other choice. What's done cannot be undone. No matter how bitter it may taste, we must put our pride aside and apologize." He looked at each one of them, his voice unwavering as he continued. "You all know what kind of dragon our king was. He never lied, not even once. Every word he spoke were truths. And if he entrusted that egg to us, and warned us about its bearer, then every action we take from here on must reflect the trust he placed in us." "Where did that human vanish to?" one of the black dragons asked, scanning the surroundings with sharp, narrowed eyes. "I don't know. He was just here a moment ago, and then he disappeared," the red dragon replied, his tone a mixture of confusion and frustration. The other three young dragons were equally baffled. They continued looking around, their keen senses stretching outward, yet not finding a single trace of him. A few minutes passed like that, the air tense with uncertainty. "What should we do now?" one of them finally asked, breaking the silence. "The elder told us to follow him, but not to harm him. But now we've lost him. He's gone. Shouldn't we contact the elder and ask for instructions? But what if he gets mad at us for losing him? We were told to track him, not to lose sight of him. We have to find that human." As they kept arguing among themselves, Ash suddenly appeared in midair, high above their heads, and began falling down rapidly due to gravity. "Now that the egg is safe, I should make sure to escape the moment any of the dragon elders arrive. But before that, I want to fight these dragons. I've got too many pent-up emotions swirling in my head. I need to release some of it right now. I should also avoid using any mana." He deactivated his absolute concealment, letting his concealment fade away entirely. As he did, he muttered to himself with quiet resolve, "Let's see how strong I really am, compared to a young dragon." The moment he muttered those words, or rather, the instant he deactivated absolute concealment, all 5 dragons instinctively looked up toward the sky. "There he is. But the egg is missing. Why is he just falling like that from such a height?" His clothes fluttered wildly in the wind as he descended rapidly, his body angled downward in a pose that looked like a fist ready to slam down from the heavens. "Is that human planning to fight us?" one of the dragons asked, a hint of disbelief in his voice. "Shouldn't you dodge, Black Dragon Bjorn?" the green dragon suggested with concern. "Are you seriously asking me to dodge the attack of a human? And he's not even using mana. Do you think humans can match us in terms of physical strength?" Bjorn scoffed, his pride evident in his voice. "But the elders always warned us not to underestimate humans," the blue dragon reminded, his tone cautious. "Humph, let me show you just how weak humans truly are," Bjorn said with a snort, and without waiting another moment, he launched himself upward toward Ash. "Is he really planning to clash with me head-on?" Ash thought as he narrowed his eyes and pulled his fist back even more, tension building in his body like a drawn bow. And in the next second, they clashed. Boom! The clash shook the air around them. A powerful shockwave burst out from the point of impact, scattering dust and leaves in every direction. Ash was flung backward like a stone skipping across water. His body spun midair before he managed to stabilize himself, landing gracefully as his boots dug into the ground, dragging along the surface with a rough screech. He clenched his fists tightly, a dull pain radiating through his arms. "My bones didn't break, but the pain is sharp, so that's the physical strength of a young dragon," I am still weak in the contest of strength, but there is no doubt my endurance is really tough now. There is not even any injury. He flexed his fingers slightly, shaking off the sting as he looked back up. But the shock didn't only hit Ash. Bjorn, the black dragon, was flung backward like a cannonball. His massive form crashed into the rocky ground with a loud boom, sending cracks racing across the earth beneath him. His wings twitched violently, and before he could stabilize his form, his body forcefully shrank down, returning to his humanoid state with a heavy gasp. He knelt there, clutching his head, his eyes wide as if lightning had struck through his skull. What was that? My brain feels like it was hit by a bell hammer. That force wasn't weak, though the pain vanished almost instantly, and he recovered within a second. Bjorn couldn't help but glance at Ash with a slightly more serious gaze now. As expected of the dragons, you do not have even a single injury. Although Ash spoke with a calm tone, to Bjorn, it felt more like a hidden insult than admiration. The silence that followed was heavy. At the same time, the other 4 dragons also shifted back, their forms shrinking as they returned to their humanoid shapes one by one. None of them replied right away, but their serious gazes spoke volumes. The red, blue, and brown dragons were male, while the green one was a female, and each of them now stood in front of Ash with a restrained yet fierce aura. Ash didn't flinch. Instead, he looked at all 5 of them and said slowly, "I don't mind if you all come at me together. I am about to test something. I don't know what will happen though, since this will also be the first time I'll be using it." Saying that, Ash took a step forward, his posture relaxed but his presence slowly growing sharper with every movement. The dragons stared back, fury flickering in their eyes, the tension thick enough to feel in the air. "I feel like he's underestimating us far too much," the green dragon said quietly, her voice low but irritated. "Yes, he's being far too arrogant for someone who just ran away moments ago," the blue dragon agreed. "Let's leave this to Bjorn," the red dragon added. "He should be able to handle him alone." "No," Bjorn interrupted, his voice steady but with clear resolve. "Let's fight together. The elders told us not to let him out of our sights. If we capture him now, they might even reward us. Rather than wasting time on pride, it's better to finish this quickly." Hearing his words, the others exchanged glances. After a brief moment, they nodded one after another, reaching an agreement without needing to say much more. "Let's do that then." "Yes. All right." Ash tilted his head slightly as he listened to them, then said with a calm expression, "Are you done talking? So let's begin. I don't have much time left, you know." The moment those words left his mouth, his figure blurred with a sudden shift of energy, and the air around him turned deathly quiet. He whispered softly, almost like reciting a sacred chant, "Divine Arts of Eternal Silence. 5th Form, Fear." Chapter 154. Not deserving the name divine. Divine Arts of Eternal Silence. 5th Form, Fear. As soon as the words left his mouth, Ash's body accelerated like a flash of light. Within a moment, he appeared in front of the red dragon. But unlike what he had expected, all 5 dragons were already tracking his movements with precise attention. I expect nothing less from the dragons. Their sharp eyes followed his every move. They didn't panic or hesitate. Instead, their bodies shifted instinctively, and they simultaneously launched coordinated attacks at Ash, their instincts and combat sense as sharp as blades. "Let's see how you plan to dodge this, human," the blue dragon thought, his fist heading straight for Ash's abdomen. The others followed with their own strikes, aiming from every direction to block off any escape route. But Ash wasn't caught off guard. He immediately stomped his foot against the ground, shifting his balance and redirecting the momentum he had built in the previous form. His body dropped into another stance, one more suited to his current need. That dark bastard might have pushed me to the edge by forcing all of his memories into my head, almost making me lose my mind, but at least I gained something out of it. The martial art technique he created was truly something else. The beauty of it lies in how it channels pure emotions to push the body to its extreme, allowing it to act beyond normal limits. Fourth form, apathy. The fifth form focused on explosive speed and striking through blind spots, meant for quick assassinations and overwhelming bursts. But the fourth form was designed for something more complex, multi-target combat. It enhanced perception, boosted reflexes, and sharpened movement until every step felt like instinct. Muttering the form's name was more than an activation. It was like flipping a switch in his very soul. His emotions dimmed, his heartbeat steadied, and a chilling calmness wrapped around his body like frost. A cold, detached aura spread around Ash, matching the emptiness in his eyes. His movements became sharp yet smooth, efficient yet powerful. His hands flowing like cold wind as he deflected and dodged every incoming strike with minimal effort. Bam! 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 Ash managed to parry and dodge 4 attacks flawlessly, but the red dragon's last strike slipped through and hit him directly in the ribs. The blow lifted him slightly off the ground. The other 4 dragons were pushed back 5 full steps from Ash's counters, while he himself was thrown 6 steps back due to the red dragon's well-timed and forceful kick. He aimed for my head, but at the last moment changed his target to my ribs. Interesting. Despite the pain, Ash felt something akin to excitement bubbling inside him. Unknowingly, the remnants of Dark Ash's personality were starting to twist their way into his thoughts. Bjorn, the black dragon, didn't give him a moment of rest. He raised his voice and declared firmly, "Do not hold back. Use your full power." With that, he shouted, "Darkness bind." The others followed instantly with their own spells. Ice rain, fire bolt, poisonous mist. As soon as they spoke, a complex web of glowing symbols spread through the air, surrounding the battlefield like an invisible trap. Ash narrowed his eyes as he observed the runes closing in. Speaking of runes, I think I can now link them to the soul tree instead of just my core. But damn, I really feel sleepy. My mind's running on fumes. Maybe I should have waited till I'd recovered. But then again, no, it's fine. The more I grind myself now, the more I'll shine later. Fifth form, fear. Once more, his body surged forward, speed returning with renewed force. He dodged the first wave of shadows from the darkness spell with ease, sidestepping and weaving between the symbols. He even avoided the early shots of ice and fire, his movements graceful and rapid despite the poisonous mist beginning to cloud his vision. Still, he pressed forward. However, just as it felt like he was about to cut through them, earth shake. The brown dragon's voice thundered through the field. The moment the words were spoken, the ground beneath Ash's feet began to tremble violently. His balance faltered for just a second, and in that second all the attacks landed. Boom! 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 "He should be down now," one of the dragons said, his voice filled with satisfaction. Obviously, my paralyzing poison must have already frozen his body completely. Amy, the green dragon, replied with confidence. It was only because of my earth spell that he got hit in the first place. If I hadn't activated it in time, none of our attacks would have landed. The brown dragon added with a proud tone. "Don't lower your guard yet," Bjorn snapped, his gaze sharp. "Surround him from every side. And damn it, Amy, why haven't you contacted anyone for backup until now? Relax, we can take care of this human ourselves. Why bother others when we're enough?" Amy said in a laid-back tone, then added after a pause. "Besides, the elders aren't responding to any of my calls either." Even while speaking, none of them looked away. Their eyes were fixed in the center of the battlefield, the spot where Ash had been struck. The smoke was thick, but as it began to clear, a familiar voice echoed softly from within the fading haze. "That hurt a little." Ash's voice rang out as he stepped forward casually, completely unharmed. He raised one hand and waved, as if greeting them in the middle of a friendly spar. His clothes were untouched, not a trace of damage on them, not even a speck of dust. It was as if he had walked through their combined attacks without being affected in the slightest. In fact, he was hurt, but his body and clothes healed quickly. "Why don't we fight using just our bodies?" Ash continued, his voice calm and almost playful. That's what I've been doing from the beginning, after all. His casual words struck them harder than any blow could have. None of the 5 dragons could hide their shock. Their expressions hardened, realizing they were still underestimating the human standing in front of them. Ash took a deep breath, his tone remaining calm. Let's fight a little longer. I think I'm starting to understand where I stand. I still need more real battle experience, and I also need to polish my skills. In short, I need to push myself before I return. The calm and almost tired way he spoke, as if he were on a simple training journey, only made the dragons angrier. Are you going to run away again using that teleportation artifact of yours? The blue dragon asked, his voice tense. Ash tilted his head slightly. What a silly question. Why would I run? We're just getting started. So they believe I used some artifact to teleport last time. Interesting. I guess I'll let them keep thinking that way. No need to clear up any misunderstandings. He lifted his arm slowly, his fingers curling slightly as he murmured under his breath. Divine arts of eternal silence. Second form, rage. A red aura erupted from Ash's body like a wildfire. It pulsed and surged, wrapping around his form, while red light burst forth from the eye slits of his mask, gleaming with unspoken intensity. The ground beneath him cracked ever so slightly from the pressure alone. The second form was not about finesse. It was a manifestation of rage itself, an art of pure motion and adaptability. It allowed the user to move without restraint, changing direction at will, twisting through the air in any posture, built for reaction and unchained offense. Come, Ash said softly, his voice low but clear, the calm before the storm. I can't keep this form active for more than 2 minutes. If I go beyond that, I'll lose control and go completely berserk. Despite how powerful the martial arts were, Ash knew these arts still weren't truly worthy of the name divine. They were incomplete. They were raw and incomplete. He would need to reshape them, make them his own. That would take time, and that was exactly what he lacked. The clash resumed. Again and again, they collided like waves against stone. Their battle grew fiercer with each passing second. Ash took a few hits, but each wound was healed instantly, his body reinforced by the life element flowing within him. On the other hand, the dragons, despite their overwhelming defense and resistance, began to feel the weight of his strikes. Ash's fists and kicks were landing with such force that even the tough muscles and scales of the dragons began to tremble. Their bones ached, not because of any visible damage, but from the sheer impact and the building pressure of their prolonged fight. 10 minutes passed, and the chaotic rhythm of the battle didn't slow for even a moment. Ash moved between his various martial forms fluidly, shifting as needed to adapt to each attack and counter. But amid the fight, he discovered a flaw in the martial arts that frustrated him. These forms, they don't connect. They were strong on their own, each one suited for a particular situation. But when it came to using them together in a sequence, there was no smooth transition. It was like trying to force disjointed pieces into a flowing melody, only to find the rhythm constantly breaking. If someone wanted to use all 7 or 8 forms together in a perfect chain, it would be nearly impossible the way they are now. His breathing had grown heavier. Huff a huff. Let's retreat now. I already know what I need to work on, and if I keep fighting any longer, I might really lose consciousness. I'm at my limit. I need sleep more than anything right now. Ash took a deep breath and raised his hands slightly, his tone casual. Let's wrap it up here. I'm really tired now. Thank you all for the spar. Hearing those words, the young dragons froze, their pride cracking like glass. He really treated us like sparring dummies. A dragon, used as a warm-up, this human. At that moment, Ash's mana had fully returned in one of his cores, and the second was about 1/3 filled. Just as he was preparing to teleport and leave, a powerful voice echoed through the air. Stop! In the next instant, 8 dragon elders appeared, surrounding Ash from all directions. Chapter 155. Escape. Stop! In the next instant, 8 dragon elders appeared from the surrounding space, enclosing Ash from every direction like a tightening net. They are here. I should. Before Ash could even finish that thought, a blazing claw tore into his chest, piercing straight through his heart. The heat surged through his body instantly. His flesh sizzled and cracked under the pressure. Blood spilled from his lips, sliding down the sides of his mask like a river breaking through stone. See? It was that simple to kill him. I truly don't understand why you all wanted to apologize, Taylor said with an expression that held no sympathy at all. Deep inside, a twisted satisfaction bloomed within him. To Taylor, humans were lesser beings, parasites that had no right to stand beside dragons. But Ash, in particular, invoked a special kind of hatred within him. Not just because of what he did, but because he had dared to impersonate the Dragon Slayer, a title that he hated to the bone. What have you done? Alarion's voice trembled as he stepped forward in disbelief. We came here to make peace with him. We were meant to apologize, not to kill him, Alarion continued, staring at the burning wound in Ash's chest. Are you really going to ignore the words of our king? Taylor's eyes darkened as he responded. The king is no longer with us, and the ideals of the past should not be allowed to control the present. If the king was really all-knowing, then why didn't he ever tell us anything about the Dragon Slayer? If only he had mentioned something. Maybe then my wife would still be alive. As he said those words, the flames on his claw continued to burn, spreading across Ash's chest, cooking through muscle and bone. Once again I'm being torn apart by pain. Ash tried to use Omni-Thought to lessen the pain, but the skill did not get activated. Ash's mental strength was already hanging by a thread. He knew he couldn't hold out much longer. I need to break physical contact with him. If I don't, he'll get dragged along when I teleport away. Taylor's voice carried on as if nothing else around him mattered. For all of you, the king might still be something close to a god. But for me, the moment my wife died, my faith in him died too. There was silence. And for a moment, none of the other elders could speak. Because even if they tried, they had no words. He's right. The king never told us anything about the Dragon Slayer. If we had known, perhaps those lives wouldn't have been lost. I want to deny him. I really do. But how can I refute such painful truth? Christos finally opened his mouth, though his voice faltered and cracked with doubt. It could be possible that the king was not able to see everything. Perhaps he only saw fragments, glimpses of what was to come. Taylor looked at him, unimpressed. You say that, but the way your voice shakes makes it clear even you don't believe it. Move your hand, Ash said, his voice trembling from pain, as he gripped Taylor's hand tightly. He tried to apply pressure, to force the dragon's claw away from his chest. But no matter how hard he pushed, Taylor's arm felt as unmovable as a mountain, like solid steel forged in the heart of a volcano. His effort did nothing. Taylor's hand remained exactly where it was, embedded deep into his chest like a burning spear. Watching the futile struggle, a smirk curled on Taylor's lips. Without saying anything, he slowly pulled his flaming claw out from Ash's chest, blood trailing behind in crimson lines. But he didn't let Ash fall. Instead, he grabbed Ash by the wrists and held him suspended in the air, his grip tightening around Ash's wrists as he kept him dangling. Yet, the moment Taylor's claws were removed from his body, something unbelievable happened. The gaping wound that should have killed Ash began to close. The torn flesh and ruptured veins started mending rapidly, and the healing was fast enough that even someone watching casually could see the muscles knitting themselves back together. Ash didn't even try to stop the healing this time. His mind was too exhausted. His thoughts were sluggish, and his mental energy had already been pushed past its limit. The rune of life in his soul was acting on its own, refusing to let him die. What is happening? Taylor's eyes widened, and the other elders also stood in stunned silence. None of them could believe what they were witnessing. They had all assumed it was over. With his heart pierced, Ash should have been dead. There should have been no chance for survival. But what they were seeing now completely shattered that belief. Ash realized that this was his one and only chance. If he didn't do something now, if he hesitated for even a second, he might be sealed away for good. With his head lowered and blood dripping from his mouth, he whispered softly beneath his breath. Eruption! A burst of lightning energy surged from within his arms. In an instant, both of his hands, which were still being held tightly by Taylor, were destroyed from the inside out. The lightning tore through his flesh and bone, separating him from Taylor's grasp with a violent blast. His wrists were gone, torn apart by his own magic. In the very next breath, he activated the only technique that could guarantee his escape. Absolute concealment, transcendent step, and just like that, Ash vanished from their sight. The others stood frozen, unable to process the sequence of events. All they saw was a badly wounded human healing beyond reason, exploding his own hands, and then vanishing without a trace. Alarion's face turned pale as he watched the spot where Ash had just been standing. "See? What will you do now?" he whispered, his voice low and full of self-loathing. The words of the king were not wrong. You harmed him, didn't you? You went against the one we were told to protect. I have sinned. Perhaps our race has already invited its doom. Alarion felt as though someone close to him had betrayed his trust, as though a sacred oath had just been broken. The weight of guilt crushed him from inside. Taylor stood silent, staring at the blood that stained his hands. Ash's blood still dripped from his fingers, but there was no satisfaction in it anymore. "There is no other choice now," he finally said in a cold, emotionless tone. "We have to find him and kill him. He might have survived this time because of some rare miracle, but no creature can survive if its head is destroyed. That will end it once and for all." His voice rose louder as he turned to the young dragons. "All of you, search for him. Leave nothing behind." But before anyone could move, Christos stepped forward, his presence blazing with frustration and defiance. "Enough is enough," he shouted, his voice shaking very air. "Do you think you can keep bossing everyone around like you are our ruler, Taylor?" "There is no ruler among us," Taylor rebutted, his eyes burning with intensity. "But if you insist on meddling in this, then perhaps it is time I become the one to take charge. And if any of you believe you have what it takes to stop me from doing so, then step forward and try." Elven continent. The hierarchy of the elves was based on two main pillars. First came the Elven Council, whose words were regarded as absolute law throughout the entire elven race. And above them stood the Elven King/Queen, the guardian of the World Tree and the only one born with the rare life affinity. However, according to ancient tradition, the King/Queen were not permitted to marry. When their life neared its end, they were required to pass down their position to the next elf born with the life affinity, the destined heir chosen by fate and the will of the World Tree. Because of this, there was no royal bloodline among the elves. Even then, the words of the King/Queen were still followed without question by the council. "Has any human child appeared on our continent in the past 3 months?" Alfhard, one of the members of the Elven Council, asked, his tone calm but probing. In this continent, it was never a requirement that only the oldest or most experienced could claim a seat in the council. The position was granted solely based on strength. The 8 strongest elves, regardless of age or background, held the authority of the council. However, if someone possessed exceptional intelligence and strategic ability beyond comparison, they could also earn a place, making them the rare 9th member. Not even adult humans have been seen near our domain, let alone a child. How could a human child possibly enter unnoticed? Aaron, the mythical rank elf responsible for overseeing all security and information within their lands, responded with firm clarity. "I have received no information regarding any new arrivals to our continent other than the regular merchants and traders that pass through," he added, leaving little room for doubt. "You are thinking too much about this, Alfhard. There is no way a human child would come here. Instead, we should be focusing all our attention on the World Tree." Arwen spoke next, her voice graceful yet stern. As one of the saints of the elven race, her words held immense weight. Alfhard, though not particularly strong in combat, had one of the sharpest minds among them. His gaze remained distant, lost in deep thought. "While what you say might be true," he finally said, his voice low and reflective, "I was hoping someone might appear. If such a thing were to happen, it could serve as a leverage point against the humans. There might also be a slim possibility that it could offer a solution to the issue we're currently facing." Bam! A heavy fist slammed down on the table, shaking the entire tree-structured chamber they were gathered inside. "Those greedy humans cannot solve our problems," Eleanor shouted, her voice laced with anger as her clenched hand trembled. "Do not bring them up again." Alfhard let out a quiet sigh and leaned back slightly, his thoughts growing heavier. "That's right. The World Tree is no longer responding, and the sacred life magic has been lost after the sudden death of previous king. We are caught between these two hopeless situations. What could the humans even do in such a case? Perhaps I should take a rest after this meeting. Thinking constantly must be wearing down the sharpness of my own thoughts." Chapter 156. Phantom Vale. Elven Continent. The continent of the elves was also known by another name, the Forest of Life. The herbs, plants, and every living thing that grew in this land were of the highest quality and held remarkable vitality. While in the Dragon Continent, the herbs were prized for their incredible age and the deeply rooted mana they absorbed over thousands of years, the herbs in the elven lands were nearly equal to them in terms of potency, owing to the rich life essence nurtured by the land itself. With their innate connection to nature and their control over spirit magic, the elves were renowned and revered as the undisputed rulers of the forest. "Can the spirits of the forest sense me?" Ash stood atop the mountain, facing the vast expanse of the Forest of Life, his thoughts adrift. His gaze remained locked on the far-off horizon, where a single majestic tree towered towards the heavens, its colossal branches stretching endlessly towards the clouds. "I don't know. Maybe they won't be able to sense me, but even if they can't detect my presence directly, they can still see me. And I can't see the spirits at all." Ash was troubled. He was stuck in a dilemma that felt like an invisible wall in front of him. 3 months had already passed, and now, the only thing standing between him and Alicia was this forest. Back then, after being pushed to his limit, he had managed to teleport himself at the very last moment to the Unicorn King's house. What happened after that was completely blank in his memory. He had opened his eyes a full day later, only to learn that within that short span of time, the entire Dragon Continent had erupted into chaos and was thrown into complete upheaval. One side, which consisted of Alarion, Christos, the Space Dragon, the Darkness Dragon, and the Blue Dragon, still clung tightly to the words of the former king, unwilling to ignore the warning of the king. The other side, however, had completely fallen under Taylor's influence, brainwashed into rejecting the king's final orders and declaring them nothing more than outdated ideals. Eventually, the conflict between the two factions erupted into open battle. And although 1/4 of their lands were devastated in the clash, the war reached no resolution. It ended in a deadlock, with both sides retreating, bloodied but unyielding. The dragons had even come searching for Ash at Solareth's location, but the illusion crafted by the Unicorn King had deceived them, and they left empty-handed. It was during that time that Ash received one of the biggest shocks since arriving here. The egg he had taken wasn't a dragon egg at all, but something entirely different. It was an egg belonging to another mythical beast, one that even the dragons seemed unaware of. And yet, despite asking again and again, Solareth never once revealed what species the egg truly belonged to. He only said, "You won't regret it." Those were the only words Ash could hold on to. He had entrusted the egg to Solareth's care, especially since he was heading to the Elven Continent where anything might happen, and danger could appear at any time. And Solareth also advised him not to steal another egg. Ash was reluctant, but eventually he agreed. Before leaving, Ash had to offer a considerable amount of his blood. Not just for the egg, but also for Eric, who still relied on life energy of his blood. Solareth had soaked the egg in his blood, claiming that it was a necessary part of the awakening process. He also handed Ash a special communicator, telling him that when the time came, either for the egg to hatch or if it needed more blood, he would contact him immediately. Of course, before leaving, Ash had quietly taken both the golden blood crystal and the golden skeleton. He had also picked up a few mana replenishment potions along with several useful artifacts, all without making a sound. Now then, should I head directly to the World Tree? Or would it be better to move slowly and cautiously? There could be traps hidden deep within the forest, but then again, the World Tree itself might be protected by far more dangerous mechanisms. In the novel he remembered, there was barely any meaningful interaction between Ray and the elves. Even during the Great Invasion when the Demon King made his move, the elves did not lift a finger to assist anyone. In truth, none of the other races offered support either. It was the humans who bore the brunt of the war, fighting against the demons with no reinforcements from any other side. There's also a possibility that the World Tree possesses a consciousness or a will of its own, and if that turns out to be true, it could actually be a blessing in disguise. Rather than wasting time negotiating with the elves, I might be able to appeal to the tree itself. It would be far more efficient. Yes, it's decided. I will go directly to the World Tree. Whether I move fast or slow, the danger will still be there. After making up his mind, Ash stretched his body lightly to loosen up, then tapped his armor, changing its color to a natural blend of earthy brown and forest green, perfect for camouflage. Even if someone did happen to catch a glimpse of him through the dense foliage of the forest, Ash hoped that his camouflage-colored armor would help him blend in just enough to be overlooked. This armor set is really amazing. Let's check its description again. /N. Don't worry, the armor description isn't included in the chapter's word count. I've written it separately, just for detail's sake. From now on, I won't include status windows or item descriptions in the official word count. So you're always getting full story content with every update. Grinning face with smiling eyes, open book sparkles. Armor name, Phantom Veil. Rank, mythical. Type, cloth set, mask, gloves, cloak, shirt, pants, boots. Description, a mythical armor set woven from spirit thread. It offers no physical defense, but its special traits give the user powerful utility in combat, exploration, and escape. Abilities, Mask of Silence. Once worn, the mask sticks to the face and cannot be removed unless the user chooses. It filters the voice, making it sound according to user will. Grasp of Resolve. Gloves enhances hand grip to the extreme. No matter what is held, weapon, scroll, or artifact, it will not fall or slip, even under extreme pressure. Veil of Night. Cloak when worn. A soft shadow falls across the user's face, obscuring it in darkness from the view of others. Even under bright light, the user's features remain indistinct. Also allows limited environmental camouflage. Boots of Momentum. Increases movement speed significantly. Enhances agility and balance on rough or unstable terrain. Allows quieter steps when walking or running. Adaptable Weave. Set effect. The clothing adapts to external temperatures, maintaining the user's body temperature and comfort regardless of the climate. Weight Shift. Set effect. The armor can adjust its own weight at will, from weightless to heavily weighted. Self-Healing Fabric. Set effect. Any damage to the clothing slowly repairs over time using the wearer's mana as fuel. Color Shift. Set effect. Allows the user to change the clothing's color and patterns to suit the environment. Note: while this armor offers no direct defense, its utility and support features are on par with legendary sets when used wisely. Yup, this suits me perfectly. I don't really need defense anyway. I'm already half immortal. This is more than enough. It gives me the best kind of support I could ask for. I should take it to Gary later. He might be able to add some more features to it. Alright, let's move now. Ash pulled out a telescope-like artifact from his space ring. It was sleek and brown-colored, etched with fine black veins, and pulsed faintly with mana. It was one of the many artifacts he had taken from the Dragon Treasury. Its purpose was straightforward. It amplified the user's vision depending on the amount of mana supplied into it. It's ideal for long-distance scouting. I can use it to pinpoint an exact location for teleportation. He funneled a small amount of mana into the device and brought it up to his eye, focusing on the world tree that towered far in the distance. The world tree was massive beyond description. Just one look at it, and it felt like the sky had grown roots. Its enormous branches pierced through the clouds and curved across the horizon like an ancient creature stretching its limbs across the world. Although the forest below was too thick and vast to see through, he could clearly spot several elven buildings constructed high up on the branches. They resembled temples or sanctuaries, seamlessly grown into the tree itself, shaped by magic and nature together. Among those structures, one caught his attention immediately. It stood directly in the center, a towering structure rooted between three massive branches. Its shape was like a blooming spiral, smooth and open at the top, with glowing leaves forming a crown-like roof. The outer walls glowed faintly with golden-green veins that pulsed like a heartbeat, as if the building itself was alive. That one's clearly different. It must be important. And if I'm going to take a risk anyway, I'd rather bet everything on something like that. I choose you. With that quiet, whimsical thought like selecting a Pokémon, Ash activated his teleportation. In the blink of an eye, his body vanished from the mountain peak. He reappeared at the top of the central building. Ash remained fully alert, his senses heightened as his eyes scanned the surroundings carefully. But his attention soon shifted toward the center of the flower-like building. The architecture opened at the top like petals spread wide to the sky, and in that open space, 9 elves were seated together, locked in a heated discussion that echoed faintly through the air. "Those greedy humans cannot solve our problems," one of the female elves exclaimed, her voice trembling with anger. Her clenched hand shook slightly as she struck the table. "Do not bring them up again." Another elf let out a quiet sigh, leaning back slightly in his chair, his expression filled with weariness. "What do you think we should do then? We have been searching for a solution for such a long time, and yet we are still circling the same questions with no answers. How is the queen? Is she still in the royal library?" Someone asked from the far end. "Yes, she is still there," another answered with a slight shake of the head. "She remains holed up in that place, endlessly trying to decode the ancient language." A few moments of silence followed, but the tension did not ease. "But can she still be considered a proper queen?" a younger elf asked cautiously. The world tree has strangely fallen into silence. It has shown no reaction ever since it acknowledged her presence. "And the previous king died so abruptly," someone added, lowering his voice as if hesitant to even speak of it. "He passed before he could transfer the knowledge of life magic to her." "Do not cross your limits, Eloan," another elder interrupted sharply, his tone filled with warning. "Do not forget where you came from or the blood you carry." "But what exactly did I say that was wrong?" Eloan protested, clearly confused rather than defiant. "I only stated the truth that everyone here is already thinking." They continued arguing among themselves, each one holding a different view, their words clashing midair like invisible blades. But for Ash, who had just arrived in the middle of this storm, it felt like a thunderbolt had struck right in front of him. A queen who cannot use life magic. A world tree that has fallen dormant. A king who died before he could pass down the legacy. Everything he heard in that moment hit him like a quiet explosion inside his mind. The weight of it settled heavily in his chest, and though his body remained still, his thoughts ran wild in every direction. Chapter 157. Royal Library. The life magic is lost? What the hell is happening here? Ash unknowingly clenched his fists, his mind racing with the weight of what he was hearing. But he didn't move and continued listening quietly, hoping to piece together the full picture. "But what exactly did I say that was wrong?" Eloan spoke again, her tone laced more with confusion than defiance. "All I did was state the truth that everyone here is already thinking in their hearts, but are too afraid to speak aloud. I believe we should end this debate here," one of the elves said, his voice calmer but more grounded in concern. "Instead of arguing, tell me this. Does anyone have any concrete idea on what we should do next? The demons have been growing bolder, spreading further. And now it's not just the Unicorn King. Even humans have begun approaching us, asking for treatment through life magic. If things continue down this path, we won't just be isolated. We will find ourselves surrounded by enemies on all sides. The one who spoke sat at the center of the gathering. He had long, flowing white hair, and his presence demanded respect. Among the 9 members present, he was the only one who could be considered the true voice of leadership within the Elven Council. As soon as he finished speaking, silence fell upon the room. No one offered a response. Letting out a heavy breath, the council head spoke again, this time more firmly. It's clear we won't find a solution if we continue like this. None of us here have the affinity to comprehend or use life magic, which is why we need to depend on the Queen. Each of you should visit her. Share your insights, offer support. Even if your words do not provide immediate answers, they might help her feel less alone. And more importantly, I want each one of you to investigate why our mother remains unresponsive. /N. Mother refers to the World Tree. Am I clear? Yes, Council Head. The others replied together, their voices respectful and unified. Eloan, since you hold the highest mastery over nature magic among us, you should go first. See how the Queen is doing and ask her to rest for a while. I have a feeling she's been pushing herself beyond her limits for far too long. Yes, Council Head. I will go immediately, Eloan replied with a calm and sincere expression. All right then, the discussion is over. Disperse. What? They are going now? I hardly heard anything useful. What should I do now? Everything is becoming too complicated. Even though frustration quietly bubbled in his chest, Ash kept his mind steady and calm. As the council members began to leave one by one, only Eloan moved in the opposite direction from the others. Her steps were firm and unhurried. She's probably heading to the library, right? And they did mention something about decoding the ancient language. If my guess is right, then everything is still within control. He stood in silence, waiting patiently for everyone to leave. But his attention remained focused solely on Eloan. Even the breathtaking appearance of the elves, the kind of beauty that could shake nations, failed to distract him. Though he did notice it, he chose to ignore it completely, directing all his focus to the task at hand. But the moment everyone was about to leave, something unexpected happened. The wide-open ceiling, shaped like the petals of a giant flower, slowly started to close, moving inwards like the dome of a stadium folding in on itself. Shit! His position was directly above the surface that had started to shift. The movement caused him to lose balance, and for a moment he almost became visible. The council head, along with 2 other members who had not yet exited completely, turned their attention toward Ash's direction. But there was no one there. I felt someone there just now, the council head said in a low voice, his eyes scanning the area with narrowed focus. He expanded his perception throughout the entire space, probing carefully for any disturbance. But even after several moments of careful observation, there was no presence detected. Eventually, without saying another word, the council head and the others turned around and left. That was too close. Who would have thought the roof would start to close so suddenly? At the very last second, Ash had quickly teleported himself just out of range, avoiding exposure by a hair's breadth. His instincts had saved him once again. Only when he was completely sure that everyone had left did Ash make his next move. He silently began to follow Eloan trail from a distance, careful not to make even the slightest sound. Wait, would I be able to see the spirits if I used elemental sight? He had tested elemental sight before arriving here, and based on his experimentation, he had reached 2 main conclusions. The first was that Omni-Thought and elemental sight could not be activated at the same time. He had searched for the reason behind it but found none. Eventually, he speculated that perhaps it was because both runes affected the mind directly. Since both placed a heavy burden on his mental faculties, it made sense that they clashed. Though it was just a theory, it was the most reasonable explanation he could come up with. The second conclusion he reached was that elemental sight required an intense level of concentration and significantly drained his mental energy. Using it carelessly would only put him at a disadvantage. Still, Let's try elemental sight. As his concentration peaked, the symbol of a third eye lit up on his forehead, and his vision changed instantly. The world around him shimmered with new layers of detail, and the flow of mana became visible in ways that were both beautiful and overwhelming. The mana flowing through the world tree was exceptionally pure. Just by observing it, Ash could feel the same gentle life energy that had healed him countless times before. He stood still, unable to move, almost humbled by the sight before him. He felt the enormous, indescribable energy resting within the tree, not violent or chaotic, but vast and watchful. It feels like I'm standing in the palm of a giant god. That was the only way Ash could describe the sensation washing over him at that moment. But as he began walking down the stairs, Ash noticed that the path was leading deep into the world tree itself. He paused for a moment, unsure of what might be hidden inside, but still chose to keep going. Elemental sight remained active. The world tree is supposed to be asleep, so I don't think it can detect me right now. But still, it's strange that I can't see any spirits at all. Still, there was no way to confirm whether his elemental sight was even working properly when it came to detecting spirits. But then, halfway down the stairs, a strange feeling washed over him. A cold, heavy sensation made his skin crawl and sent goosebumps down his arms. Demonic energy. Even his normally calm, dead-looking eyes widened a little. Because of the primordial core inside him, Ash was extremely sensitive to different types of energy. This time he could feel it clearly. Something dark and twisted was coming from below. It was thick and heavy, and it made the air feel suffocating. Don't tell me the world tree went quiet because of the demons. That thought made his expression tighten. If what he was sensing was true, then the truth behind the Elven continent was far more dangerous than what the novel had ever described. Nothing about this was written. He was walking into unknown territory now. Still, he kept going. Eventually, they reached the base of the world tree. But getting here wasn't easy. Along the way, there were several guarded doors, magical barriers, and checkpoints with strong security. At every corner, guards stood alert. Ash had to carefully hide himself, teleporting only at the very last second before the doors shut behind Elva. It took effort, but he managed to stay hidden and follow her this far. And now, finally, in front of him stood another massive library. While it wasn't as huge as the one in the Dragon Continent, it was still large, about twice the size of the one at Starlight Academy. Lately, it feels like I keep ending up in libraries. Once I heal Alicia, I'll come back and read every book in all three of them. Because even if someone had power, knowledge was still the most reliable weapon. He activated elemental sight again after reaching the bottom level. Instantly, that ominous energy he felt earlier grew even stronger, thick enough to almost make his body freeze. The source of the energy wasn't coming from the books or the walls. No, it was coming from deeper below, far beneath the ground. Something's hidden under the roots of the world tree. I'll have to check that out later. For now, I need to stay focused on following the elf. One thing he was thankful for was that the library wasn't crowded. Except for a few quiet servants, likely there to serve the queen, there was barely anyone around. After walking quietly for a while longer, Ash finally saw her. The Queen of the Elves. Chapter 158, Elf Queen. The Queen of the Elves was surprisingly beautiful, even with how tired she looked. Her long green hair was a little messy, and faint dark circles sat under her eyes. Her head rested on a pile of books, and a bit of drool slipped from her mouth as she slept. Even like this, she looked peaceful, like someone who had stayed up too long chasing something important. She looked around 20 or 21, but elves lived for a very long time, so it was hard to guess her real age. She was sleeping with her head buried in books, clearly worn out. Even though a queen sleeping like this might not seem proper, the dark circles under her eyes made it clear she had been working too hard. "She is sleeping?" Elowen muttered softly, almost under her breath. She appeared in front of her study desk and gave a formal bow. "Your Majesty, please wake up." Hearing Elowen's clear voice echo gently through the quiet library, the elf queen jolted up in surprise, blinking as she lifted her head. "Oh, it's Aunt Elowen," she said, her voice soft and sweet. I have already told you not to refer to me as your aunt, your majesty, Eloan replied, still bowing with a respectful tone. But the queen only smiled gently and stood from her seat, her arms stretching slightly as she yawned. But you said I could call you that when we're alone. And besides, it's not like I really feel like a queen, anyway. Looking away, Serena muttered quietly, it just feels like I'm doing everything halfway. Eloan looked at the queen with a dazed expression, her thoughts drifting back to the day when her niece had been chosen as the current queen. At that time, she had truly felt happy for her. But as the days passed, everything began to fall apart. The Elf King died suddenly, before he could even pass down the knowledge of life magic to Serena, his successor. But the troubles did not end there. Soon after his death, the World Tree stopped responding to the Queen's words. The spirits began disappearing overnight. Except for those already bound by contracts with the elves, all the uncontracted spirits slowly started to vanish. And now, her young niece had to carry such a heavy and cruel burden to learn life magic, all on her own, at an age when she should have been carefree, smiling, and learning about the world around her. Eloan let out a long sigh before speaking again. It's all right, you're doing your best, and that's what matters most. But seriously, what's going on with you? Why are you growing thinner by the day? Are you even eating properly? Look at those dark circles under your eyes. Just rest for a while, please. Her tone shifted to that of a strict but caring aunt as she began to scold Serena gently. Eloan didn't want her to remain in the queen's position. It was a selfish desire, yes, but it came from the purest part of her heart. She believed Serena shouldn't have to carry such a heavy weight without any proper support. She didn't wish anything bad upon her niece. But every time she looked at her tired face and that fake, weary smile she wore, her heart cracked just a little more. All she wanted was for Serena to live a peaceful and happy life. And even if that meant stepping away from her role as queen, Eloan was willing to push for it. That was also the reason why, in front of others, she had said that Serena was not truly a queen. All right, Aunt, Serena said with a soft chuckle. I promise I'll start taking care of myself properly from now on. And you know what? I actually found a small clue. I've managed to decode the meaning of one letter. Just one. Her voice started off hopeful and bright, but slowly faded into sadness by the time she reached the end of her sentence. Eloan smiled gently and continued to stay by Serena's side, helping her with anything she could. Time passed like flowing water, and before they knew it, for hours had gone by. Throughout this entire time, Ash heard everything. But then his eyes carefully started to scan the books in the library. But there was a problem. All the books related to life magic are located in the section where those two are staying. Serena and Eloan were sitting at the deepest part of the library, and after checking through the labeled sections, Ash realized most of the books here focused on herbs, spirit magic, nature magic, history, and many other topics. Even though he didn't want to waste a single second, he had no other choice but to wait patiently. However, there was another concern gradually surfacing in his mind. How am I supposed to reach the source of the demonic energy? The most straightforward method that crossed his thoughts was to dig a tunnel. But that idea came with problems of its own. It would take far too long, and even worse, the sound and disturbance it would create could easily alert someone nearby, ruining everything he had carefully planned so far. As he stood there, caught in thought, his gaze fell upon a small, cracked shard of a mirror lying nearby. His reflection stared back at him through the fragmented glass. The dullness in his eyes, the lifelessness etched into them, brought a strange thought to his mind. Should I talk to her? Ash's mental state was, at best, unstable, drifting between calm calculation and emotional dissonance. With the memories of Dark Ash in his consciousness, Ash was fully aware of one truth. If he didn't start opening up to others soon, even just a little, there was a real possibility that he might lose his sanity. Let's try. If she agrees to help, then everything will unfold smoothly. As long as I can convince her, I won't have to worry about anyone else finding me. Having made his decision, he chose to wait until Eloan left the room. During that time, he occupied himself by reading several books related to herbs, carefully flipping through them and absorbing as much as he could. Finally, after an hour passed, Eloan stood up and exited the area. Though a few maids remained in the library, they were positioned far from Serena's section. If the queen needed anything, she could simply ring the small silver bell placed beside her desk. Ash remained cautious. He waited another 15 minutes after Eloan had left, not wanting to take any unnecessary risks or act in haste. Once he was absolutely certain the coast was clear, he altered the color of his outfit, shifting it from the earthy brown that had helped him blend in with the library surroundings to his usual deep black. However, this time, he added striking white and red lightning patterns to the fabric, weaving them subtly along the edges. And with quiet footsteps and unwavering resolve, he finally began moving toward the Elven Queen. Serena, Elf Queen POV. What does this even mean? I don't understand why the ancestors had to write the life magic in a language that no one remembers anymore. Serena murmured, frustration clinging to her words. She clutched at her hair, leaning closer to the open book before her. Her tired eyes locked on the passage that stated clearly how life magic had once been passed down to the first queen of their race directly by the Great Mother herself. If only the Great Mother would respond to me, everything would become so much easier. Letting out a deep, weary sigh, she slumped over the table. Why is she not answering my call? What am I doing wrong? At first, the general belief among the council and the scholars was that the World Tree might be in danger, which would explain the silence. But after a thorough inspection and countless tests, they found no damage to the World Tree at all. The truth had been kept hidden from the public for now, but Serena knew deep down that it wouldn't remain a secret forever. The signs were too obvious. The spirits, especially those that were uncontracted, were vanishing one by one. Eventually, people would realize that something was deeply wrong, and questions would begin to spread like wildfire. I have to do better. As long as I can fully understand the life magic, maybe then the Great Mother will finally acknowledge me. Maybe this is all just a trial, a test meant only for me to overcome. Yes? She whispered softly, almost pleading with herself. It must be a test. But just as those words left her lips, a cold and neutral voice echoed softly from nearby. The tone was calm and low, not threatening, but clear enough that it cut through the silence like a blade. Test? Don't give yourself false hope. Serena jolted from her seat, instantly rising to her feet as her eyes locked onto a figure standing just a few feet away from her. The intruder was cloaked in pitch-black clothing, a hood draped low over his head, casting a shadow that made it nearly impossible to see his face clearly. Still, under the heavy darkness, it was obvious that the person wore a black mask adorned with red and white lightning patterns across its surface. Behind the mask, faint traces of blue eyes glowed dimly, though their clarity was blurred and mysterious. Without wasting a moment, Serena's instincts took over. Her hands moved swiftly, and the ground responded to her will. Vines and thick roots burst out from beneath the floor, surging like living snakes to wrap tightly around the stranger, binding him in an instant. Yet, despite being restrained so suddenly and with such force, the hooded figure did not resist. He simply stood there, unbothered and still. He's male, that much is clear from the voice. But how did he even get in here? The security of this place is far too strict for someone to just appear like that. And with such an ominous appearance. He's dangerous. I need to alert everyone immediately. Even though Serena's appearance looked tired and messy, she hadn't forgotten her training. Since childhood, she was taught how to stay calm in unexpected situations, how to analyze threats, and how to fight both with magic and in close combat. She was not someone who would panic easily. But just as she was about to call for help, her hand paused in midair when she heard the stranger's words. I am not here to fight, O Queen of Elves. I've come to help you. I know why the World Tree is no longer responding, why the spirits have vanished, and I can also assist you in decoding that ancient language. Chapter 159, Earning Queen's Trust. I am not here to fight, O Queen of Elves. I've come to help you. I know why the World Tree is no longer responding, why the spirits have vanished, and I can also assist you in decoding that ancient language. Hearing that, Serena froze. Her body stiffened, and her mind instantly entered a heightened state of alert. How does this person know about all of this? Could there have been a leak? She knew that only a few individuals were aware of the World Tree's condition. Herself, the members of the Elven Council, and a handful of other trusted figures. Every one of them had been carefully chosen and were people she had complete faith in. As if he could read her thoughts, the masked figure spoke again, his voice calm and composed. If you're wondering how I came to know these things, I cannot tell you that. Hearing his response, Serena's hand moved slightly, and the vines and roots coiled more tightly around Ash's body. But even as they constricted with greater force, not a single sound of pain escaped from him. He stood silent and still. Your words. How can I possibly believe anything you say? Serena asked, her voice steady, though her heart was conflicted. In truth, she wanted to alert everyone right away. But the possibility of getting answers to the questions that had haunted her for so long, it made her hesitate. To show my sincerity, he said, I can reveal the reason why the Great Mother is not responding to your calls. Will that be enough for now? Tell me, Serena replied plainly, her expression unreadable. There is something beneath the World Tree, buried deep within its roots, that is forcing it into a state of sleep. That is the reason. Serena didn't interrupt him. She listened carefully, absorbing every word. When he finished, she slowly responded, We have already checked the roots of the World Tree and found nothing unusual. There was no sign of corruption or damage. If that is all you have to say, then you should just. Her words were cut off as Ash calmly interrupted. Then allow me to go there with you. Take me to the roots of the World Tree, and I will show you what I speak of. If I fail to do that, you may take my life without hesitation. Serena gave a short, humorless laugh as she looked at him. I do not trust strangers, and with how confident you sound, it only makes you more suspicious. If you truly know that much, doesn't that make you the prime suspect behind all of this? If that is the case, then sign a mana contract with me, Ash offered without flinching. Once the contract is formed, you will see for yourself that my words are true and that I have no hidden intentions. This time, Serena didn't answer immediately. Her thoughts grew silent. Should I take this risk? But everything about him feels suspicious. What do you really want? She finally asked, watching him carefully. I find it hard to believe that someone would come here, offer their help with no demand in return, and risk their life in the process. You must want something, right? I want nothing, Ash answered without hesitation. But if you still doubt me, then prepare a mana contract at the highest level. I will sign it and prove everything I say is true. But why? Serena started to speak again, but he interrupted once more, his tone calm yet serious. Words are nothing but noise unless there is trust. Without trust, nothing I say will convince you. So let's skip the empty talk and go straight to the proof. Prepare the contract. Feeling the weight and truth behind his words, Serena quietly reached into her space ring and pulled out an ancient scroll imbued with binding magic. She activated it with a gentle touch of mana, and the scroll floated between them, its surface glowing softly in the air. Then Ash clearly stated the conditions. According to what he said, Ash would show her the true cause behind the World Tree's dormancy. If his words turned out to be true, Serena must fully trust him and promise to hide his presence from others. In exchange, Ash would help her decode the ancient language. And if it was within his power, he would also assist in solving the issue regarding the World Tree. However, if what he said was false, the contract would activate and destroy his heart. Serena listened carefully, but added one more condition herself. She removed the part that said, if within his power, and changed it to a clear and direct condition. Ash would have to help resolve the issue with the World Tree no matter what. Ash let out a quiet sigh as he noticed the stubborn determination in her eyes, but he still agreed. In truth, all he wanted was access to the books related to life magic and the ancient text. Even if the contract ended up destroying his heart, it wasn't like he would die. Now, can you remove these vines? I'm starting to feel a bit uncomfortable here. Hearing his calm voice, Serena waved her hand without saying anything. The vines loosened instantly and slowly retracted back into the ground beneath his feet. Ash rolled his shoulders lightly and adjusted his posture before speaking again. "Follow me." Though his outer expression remained steady, inside his thoughts were racing. "I only know that the cause behind the world tree falling dormant and the disappearance of the spirits is linked to the demonic energy I sense deep underground. But I don't actually know what exactly is hidden down there. Still, it's good that I never claimed to know the full details in the contract." Ash made his way to a specific spot within the library, the one where the demonic energy had felt the strongest. He stopped and looked at Serena, then pointed at the ground. "Can you take us below from here? And if it's possible, try to make enough space while going down. We don't know what might be waiting for us below." Serena glanced at him sharply, her tone turning colder as she replied, "Didn't you say you already knew the cause?" Ash replied calmly without changing his expression. "And when did I say I didn't? I said I knew the cause, not the exact details. There's a difference. I know something is down there that's connected to all of this. I never said I know what exactly it is." Serena narrowed her eyes, clenching her jaw for a moment as she listened to his reply. Does he really know what he's talking about? But the contract hasn't broken, so his words have to be true. She took a deep breath and calmed her thoughts. Then, with a smooth gesture of her hand, she began to manipulate the ground. Slowly and steadily, the stone below their feet reshaped itself into a spiral staircase leading downward. Even if Serena was unable to use life magic, she was still a genius born once a century. Her mastery over nature and terrain was exceptional, and her achievements in every magical field stood above the rest. Ash began descending the newly formed stairs, with Serena following closely behind. They walked down for several minutes and eventually reached a dead end. Ash paused, then looked at her and said, "We need to go deeper." The roots of the world tree were beginning to appear, thick and ancient, stretching out like massive pillars. Each root was as thick as a city wall, their bark rough and pulsating slightly with a faint green glow. They continued creating paths downward, repeating the process of forming new spiral staircases through the dense layers of earth and roots. Again and again, they reached dead ends, only to dig further. This pattern continued for 4 or 5 more levels, each deeper than the last. Finally, after the 5th descent, Ash raised his hand slightly and motioned for Serena to stop. "Stop! We have arrived." Serena looked around carefully and said, "But there is nothing here." Ash responded in a calm tone. "The reason you all did not find anything beneath the ground was because it was hidden using illusion and spatial interference. Illusions had no effect on Ash, and because of that, he could clearly see the hidden isolated space." Hearing Ash's words, Serena still looked unsure, but she didn't interrupt and simply replied, "I see. But how are you able to sense it?" "Me? It's simply because illusions don't work on me." Serena was about to scoff at the way he said that, but her reaction paused mid-thought as her eyes fell on the sword that suddenly appeared in Ash's hand, emerging from its ring form. The sword shimmered softly with a rainbow-like glow, its presence alone enough to make her instincts alert. "I can feel it. There's something deep and mysterious hidden in that sword," Serena thought, unable to look away. Though she couldn't tell exactly what it was, something about it made her wary. Ash slowly unsheathed the blade and said, "Well, it doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. As long as I cut open the space confinement, the illusion will naturally disappear." As he spoke, a surge of violet-colored mana started to wrap around the sword. It didn't appear elegant or polished, but rather like raw energy being forcefully shaped. Then, without any unnecessary movement, he swung the blade. Space cut. A diagonal line sliced through the air, and immediately, the concealed illusion broke apart. Faint outlines of complex formations lit up in the air, making the hidden structure visible to the naked eye. It was real. There really is something hidden down here. Serena was stunned, her thoughts racing. Before she could fully grasp the situation, Ash gently grabbed her by the wrist and pulled her along, jumping through the opening he had created. What is he doing? It was the first time in her life a boy had touched her. Her breath caught in her throat, her face flushed bright red, and her body froze for a moment. But she didn't stop him. She could tell clearly from his actions that it wasn't done out of disrespect or any improper intent. The spatial cut was closing fast, and had he not acted quickly, they wouldn't have made it inside in time. Yet whatever emotions she was feeling just a second ago disappeared completely, washed away by the scene that unfolded in front of her eyes. What the hell is happening here? Serena whispered, her voice trembling slightly as shock took over. Her entire body froze, her eyes widened, and a cold chill ran down her spine. Even Ash, whose face usually remained calm and unreadable, looked completely stunned. What the hell, he thought to himself, his mind unable to form any other response to what they were now witnessing. Chapter 160, Demonic Heart. Inside the isolated space, an unnatural silence echoed. The area was wide, as if someone had carved out a vast hollow space beneath the world tree itself. There were no rocks or dirt walls like one would expect underground. Instead, massive roots of the world tree filled the space, spreading across the chamber like a network of giant veins. But something was terribly wrong. Those sacred roots were pulsing with a strange, twisted energy. The demonic presence was not just faint or lingering. It was strong, thick, and deeply rooted into the very core of the tree. The entire place reeked of dark mana. And then came the real shock. The missing spirits, the ones the elves had been searching for, were all here. They hovered around the roots, their auras flickering like weak candlelight in the wind. Some were trying to protect the pure parts of the roots, clinging to the last traces of uncorrupted energy. But even they were being consumed, slowly and painfully, as the dark energy crept through the roots like poison in blood. The entire area had turned into a battlefield. Demonic spirits, completely corrupted and hostile, were fighting against the few remaining normal ones. There was no order, no peace, just chaos and slow destruction. And in the center of it all was a heart. A large, unnatural heart that pulsed with terrifying rhythm. It was almost double the size of a normal heart and was fused directly into the world tree's root system. Thick veins and tendons from the heart were tightly wrapped around the roots, pumping corruption deep into the tree. Ash stared at it in disbelief. What the hell is that heart? He could feel the immense power radiating from it. The demonic energy stored inside the heart alone was enough to choke anyone unprepared. And the worst part was that this corruption was slowly eating away at the foundation of the world tree itself. Spirits, when they die, are supposed to return to nature. Their essence is meant to become one with the mana and flow back into the tree. But here, that natural cycle was broken. Almost the entire space was filled with demonic spirits. Only a few normal spirits were left, and they were struggling, their strength clearly fading. Ash gripped Eclipse tighter. Their numbers are insane. Meanwhile, Serena's body trembled without control, her breath uneven. Her mind and body were rejecting the demonic energy surrounding them. It felt disgusting, sickening, like something crawling under her skin. What is this awful feeling? I need to escape. I need to run. Before she could completely break down, a steady hand landed on her shoulder. Ash's calm voice followed, quiet but firm. We should retreat for now. Serena instinctively nodded her head, quickly and nervously, like a frightened rabbit trying to hide from a predator. But they didn't even get a full second of relief. All the demonic spirits suddenly stopped moving. Their distorted heads turned toward them in perfect sync, eyes glowing with malevolence. Ash narrowed his eyes and whispered fast, "Buy me a moment. I need to open the way again." Serena reacted without delay. She stepped forward, raised her hands, and began chanting. A wall of earth surged from the ground, reinforced with twisting vines and roots. It blocked the spirits just as they began to rush forward. A loud explosion shook the space as the spirits slammed into it. Cracks spread rapidly across the wall, but Serena didn't panic. She raised another barrier behind it just in time. The first wall shattered, reduced to rubble, while the second absorbed the next wave. but even that was starting to break. Just as the new cracks formed and dust scattered through the air, Ash finished the cut. He grabbed Serena's arm and pulled her backward into the slice of space, just as it snapped closed behind them, sealing the chaos away once more. As cracks began to appear on the second wall, Ash reached out and pulled Serena outside. The moment they escaped, the space behind them closed shut. Back in the library. "Will you stop crying? It's getting annoying now," Ash asked, sitting across Serena, his tone calm but distant. Serena, with her head lowered and her body trembling softly, continued to cry in silence. The sound of her sobs filled the air, and Ash's words seemed to float past her, unnoticed. He let out a long breath and leaned back slightly, deep in thought. Can I really fix this situation? From his past experiences, he already understood something very clearly. Whenever he came into contact with demonic energy, his healing ability would weaken significantly. That could only mean one thing. The nature of demonic energy directly resisted the energy of life. And now, with such a heavy, concentrated amount of demonic energy present beneath the world tree, enough to rival even the tree's own life energy, the possibility of corruption wasn't just real, it had already begun. Fighting all those demonic spirits head-on would be a nightmare. The best option is to find a way to cut off that heart from the tree itself, and then seal it away somewhere safe. But that's going to be incredibly difficult. That black heart was alive, beating like it belonged to something conscious. And from everything he had seen in countless stories and books, anything like that never went down without a fight. There would definitely be some kind of backlash, some kind of threat waiting. His thoughts were interrupted when Serena finally spoke, her voice quiet and still slightly shaky. "Mister, you haven't told me your name yet." Ash looked at her, her tear-stained face trying hard to hold itself together, and replied simply, "Just call me Unknown. I really couldn't think of a better name right now. Using this one might actually work better for me in the long run." Serena gave a faint nod and stood up slowly. Though she had calmed down a little, her face was still pale, and her hands were slightly trembling. "Mr. Unknown, thank you for showing me what I couldn't see before. As promised, I won't tell anyone about your presence here. But I must inform the council. They have to be made aware of this. Only they can act to destroy the root of this problem." Her voice was soft but serious, filled with the weight of responsibility she had carried for too long. "You can't do that," Ash said immediately, cutting off her momentum. Before she could ask why, he continued with the same calm tone. "Think carefully. How do you think something like that ended up under the world tree in the first place? Something that dangerous didn't get there on its own. Someone had to put it there. And from what I've seen and what you've said, only a few people even have access to the lower parts of the world tree. You, the council members, a few important figures, and maybe some trusted maids." Ash's gaze sharpened slightly as he looked into her eyes. "You understand what I'm trying to say, don't you?" Serena's expression changed. Her lips quivered slightly, and her voice cracked just a little as she answered. But no elf would ever try to harm the Great Mother. That's impossible. It has to be someone from outside, someone who snuck in." Ash paused for a second, then sighed quietly and replied, "I'm not saying you're completely wrong. That could be true. But there's also a real possibility that someone among your own people is involved. And if you rush into this by gathering the council and launching a large operation, whoever is behind it will get alerted. That could lead to even more problems, maybe even deaths." He turned his back to her and picked up several books from the nearby shelves, specifically the ones related to life theory. "I'll be in the next section reading these. Take your time to think things through. Our contract is already halfway complete. I've shown you the cause of the problem. What's left is decoding the ancient text and helping you deal with the world tree's situation. And what route we will follow to achieve that depends on the decision you make next." Serena slowly lowered herself back into her chair. Her whole body felt heavier than ever before. It wasn't that she didn't understand what he said. But even then, accepting the idea that someone from her own race, someone who had grown up under the branches of the Great Mother, might betray her, was a truth too bitter to swallow so easily. When she saw the roots of the world tree, she could only imagine the pain and suffering the Great Mother must be going through. Even though she couldn't fully feel it herself, there was a deep ache inside her chest that she didn't know how to put into words. What should I do now? Should I tell the council or not? But if not, how will we solve this problem?